DC Tyrant. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Kryptonian Cause and Effect. At night. The night of the metropolis is always starry and colorful. Looking down from above, the continuous car lights converge into a river, and the colorful city billboards flash a dazzling and noisy night scene. Even at night, the metropolis will not be quiet. At night, there is naturally a bustling world. A Rolls-Royce Phantom is driving through the prosperous avenue with bright lights and wine, driving towards the Galaxy International Hotel. Badi is sitting in the car. Badi leans back, his back is pressed against the leather seat, his neck is straight, and his eyes are closed. He seems to be solemn and closed. In fact, his heart has never stopped. In the past 2 days, since he heard that Jor-El's son landed on the Earth, he has been unable to calm down. Did he carry the code of life? He is still alive. Jor-El should have received the news long ago, and what kind of targeting would he make? Jor-El. Badi slowly opened his eyes, habitually supported his left hand with his right hand, and rubbed his palm with his thumb. He turned his head, and looked at the endless stream of people and vehicles outside the car window, which kept flying past, and his heart was immersed in the memories of Krypton. He and Hale were good friends, and they had been since college. At the beginning, he had the worst genes in the military academy, but he was the top student in combat, military, and strategy. Hale was the smartest in the academy, and was hailed as the existence of the next generation of the Academy of Krypton. He also represented the most outstanding scientist in that young era, and his future was limitless. If nothing unexpected happened, Badi could actually use Hale to do a lot of things, but Hale just worshipped Jor-El. Jor-El. This man did have an extremely smart mind. He was discovered by Badi when he infiltrated the military guild and almost controlled the upper echelons of the military guild. Of course, Badi actually knew the reason for the failure that time. He took too big a step because he knew that Krypton was about to face the fate of explosion, and his steps were too fast. He wanted to control the entire Krypton with tough military actions. At one time, he framed General Zod and once sat in the position of general. He was the youngest general in the history of Krypton, and had unlimited glory. The moment of real failure was when Hale was officially given the L family emblem. Hale was adopted by Jor-El. From Hale, he knew everything about himself, his ambitions, and desires. Hale didn't know much, but from the subconscious way that Badi tried to win him over, what he said, and what he did with him, it was enough to know that Badi was a man with ambitions, and put them into action. Badi originally wanted to stop the destruction of Krypton, and then become the king of Krypton, find the Earth to bask in the sun, and lead the entire Krypton to rule the universe. Because Kryptonians, Kryptonian genes, can become stronger by basking in the sun. If you have such a group of men, it would be an ideal thing to rule the entire universe. The ability of Kryptonians, after basking in the sun, is indeed terrifyingly powerful, and they can be said to be the most powerful thugs. Since Hale became Jor-El's adopted son, every action of Badi seemed to be hindered. Jor-El also took the initiative to search for evidence that led to General Zod's acquittal. The two of them cooperated even more, and pulled him down from the position of general. Most of his subordinates died because they took the blame. He was almost sent to the Phantom Zone because he was too close to the secrets of the Meditation Guild, the Military Guild, and the Science Guild. Of course, this was a false accusation. Jor-El played a good trick to send himself to the Phantom Zone. Then Badi became the public enemy of the entire Krypton. Because Badi then really used Jor-El's hand to understand many secrets of the various Kryptonian guilds and the entire Kryptonian, causing the anger of the entire Kryptonian upper class. In the end, because of peeping at the code of life, he almost got the code of life, but unfortunately he failed, and was hunted down by General Zod and his army. The knife mark left on his cheek by Fyra was tampered by Jor-El in the temporary escape spaceship, wanting to disappear in space. If Badi had not thoroughly checked the spaceship after it took off to ensure that he could reach Earth, and used Hera to delay the explosion of the bomb, he would not have been able to come to Earth. Badi was able to explode on Earth when he entered the atmosphere, killing him half to death, and was picked up by General Vic like a corpse and taken back for a search. How unsafe it was that this happened was inevitably targeted by Jor-El. These few sentences reveal the result. In fact, Badi's situation was even more dangerous at that time. A large number of people who agreed with him died in Krypton, a society with iron-blooded cruelty and highly strict rule. The general was actually just a pawn of the guild, and the water on Krypton was deeper than anyone imagined. Pedestrians, vehicles, green trees, and colorful lights on the street passed by the car window. In the whole world, it seemed that only his car was moving forward, which made his eyes flash slightly. Badi came back to his senses, and came back to his mind from his memories. He was also wondering in his heart whether the code of life that he had robbed was forged by Jor-El. The real life code had long been integrated into his son's body. When Kal-El was still in the womb, he had already been integrated into the body of the future Superman by Jor-El in his mother's body. Because it takes a lot of time to integrate an entire life code, it is definitely not like in the movie, where Superman is immediately integrated into the life code as soon as he is born. That would only cause the gene to be blocked and collapse. Only by gradually integrating it in the mother's womb is the safest way. Badi didn't believe that Jor-El would be so stupid and would only act at the last moment. Because among all the things that happened, the beginning of Jor-El's suspicion was that he knew Badi wanted to inadvertently understand the life code. Badi rubbed his palms slightly, thinking with his eyes, and recalled everything. He realized that Jor-El should have discovered the destruction of Krypton a long time ago, anticipated the destruction of Krypton, and the reaction of the entire Krypton, so he stole the life code early. He is not as fair and selfless as he looks, and is even more selfish. Knowing everything, he made the best preparations, intending to send his son away, and then died with Krypton with a guilty heart. What's more, Badi suspected that he had upgraded his soul consciousness and became an artificial intelligence consciousness, always protecting his son. So, your son's body has the code of life. And what kind of preparations will you make to protect your son? Badi's eyes flashed. The car stopped. Badi put down his hands, and the door was opened by the driver. Light shone in, and it was the luxurious Galaxy International Hotel. Chapter 102 Qualifications. Galaxy International Hotel, the top floor banquet hall. The hall is magnificent, spacious, and luxurious, magnificent, and elegant. This is a grand gathering of the family. Everyone is dressed up to attend the banquet. The men are elegant and graceful, showing the noble manners and cultivation of the upper class. The women's evening dresses are even more sexy and revealing, showing the most graceful figure and smiling red lips. It has been a long time since there was a banquet to welcome someone to join their family. When they thought that in the future, with several medicines and skincare products from Universe Biology Co. Limited, their investment assets could be multiplied by dozens of times, some people couldn't help but burst into passion, as if they saw a seductive female fairy. The famous band played love accompaniment, playing beautiful background sounds for these upper class people, setting off their luxurious, confident and masterly side. It is their honor to let some country bumpkins and people from the lower class experience this kind of luxurious enjoyment. Many family members thought so. There were also a few who thought that these people who came out of the suicide slums only knew how to fight and kill. If they joined their family, they would pollute the environment. They could just buy the Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited with hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was no need to let him join. They were the upper class, the nobles. Letting a person from the suicide slums join the family would lower the style of the entire family. They had a lot of objections. They were all nobles who had stayed in the metropolis for more than 100 years. It was hard to imagine sitting at the same table with such a lowly person. The banquet was accompanied by music, fragrant wind and beautiful women, and slowly unfolded. When Badi appeared in a white suit, the entire banquet hall stopped moving and fixed their eyes on him. The light and beautiful background sound was surrounding. His face was beautiful like a knife and an axe carving a hard sculpture. He was mature and steady with a great atmosphere. His eyes were as deep as a black hole, which was fascinating. His every move exuded a noble and majestic aura with deep background. All of them showed that he came from a more serious environment, where every word and every style was regulated and solemn, and he was a high-ranking and powerful person. As soon as he arrived at the scene, there were whispers of people criticizing him. He is Bamulodi, right? He looks really good. Sexy beauties at the scene were attracted by his majestic temperament. This was completely different from the so-called capitalists and some nobles. This was a domineering and conquering demeanor without losing the gentleman's etiquette and gentleness. The women at the scene were especially amazed and breathless. He's just a little bit good looking, what's the use? A man saw the female companion beside him stretching her neck, wanting to get close to Bamulodi and rush into Bamulodi's arms. He was jealous and sneered. That's right, he's just a country bumpkin who knows how to fight and kill. He got lucky and bought Noi biotechnology, which happened to have several drugs developed in it, so they got a bargain. Noi, the fat guy, is also stupid. He is still working for this country bumpkin. His company's 15 years of research drugs are just sent to him for nothing. A lucky guy. His appearance can only please women in nightclubs. I heard that he did start from a slum nightclub. Haha, it seems that we should let him dance for us. This is exactly what male dancers do. Many men shook champagne, disdainful, and coldly mocked. Seeing the way many beautiful women looked at Badi, they were very impatient. These women had flickering eyes, and some even licked the corners of their mouths. It was obvious that they had a great liking for Badi. Just seeing his appearance was enough to give rise to a liking, enough to fall in love at first sight. This made them grit their teeth in hatred. They were all the second generation in the family. They were usually the focus of attention, the cover characters of magazines, and the talked about characters in society. How could they bear to lose, just because of their looks? Especially at the banquet, there were many famous actresses and noble ladies that they wanted to get involved with. How could they let a man steal all the limelight? He is so handsome. Even if I had a one-night stand with him, it would be a beautiful memory. A woman of high status spoke. One of them was wearing a purple evening dress. The dress was tight to her body. Her skin was white and her figure was very curvy. The shoulders were slanted to her chest, revealing her side balls. She was round, white and beautiful, and she was unique. The hem of the evening dress was also slanted. It was slanted very deeply, deep and vaguely, and it was suffocatingly bold, avant-garde and sexy. This kind of evening dress was very bold even in later generations. Now it was only the 1980s, but it was already a suffocatingly bold operation. This was a beauty that many people in the second generation pursued, but could not get. She was beautiful, avant-garde, and bold. Many people bowed down and wanted to have a night with her. She is not a second generation in the family, and her status is not low. Not many second generations dare to touch her when she expresses her opinions. Many women who dare not speak out also nodded slightly and agreed secretly. This made many second generation men full of hatred and stared at Badi. Even if you are confident, you can't help but feel proud. Being a man who wants a woman to have a one-night stand with you and leave a beautiful memory is obviously very worthy of envy, jealousy, and hatred. So that's the case. There is no shortage of male dancers in this world, but there is a shortage of men with capital, power, authority, and status. He doesn't have any ability. With just a word from his family, he still came to the banquet and offered his company obediently. He doesn't have the ability. If he doesn't do this, his future will be blocked, and he won't be able to survive in the metropolis. He can't afford to offend our family. He can only experience luxury and wealth here, but he is unwilling and has to return to the suicide slums to eat sewage with bitterness in his heart. That's right. A second generation man raised his glass lightly and toasted with other men who agreed with him with a smile on his face. They have the capital to be proud of themselves. They were born into the life of billionaires. Luxury cars, beauties, status, and limelight are all better than these country bumpkins. They enjoy better than these country bumpkins and receive better education than them. Inheriting excellent bloodlines makes them arrogant enough to despise these country bumpkins who are ignorant of the world and want to make it to the metropolis. A group of second generations were full of confidence, with mocking expressions on their lips as they raised their glasses and toasted invisibly. They were proud and arrogant. In their conversation, the country bumpkin was worthless and became a laughing stock and a topic of joke. Really? But I heard that the head of the family, Mr. Edge, invited him to join the family to work together for profit. That is to say, after tonight, he will be a member of the family and will be equal to your father and mother. The bold and avant-garde woman in a purple evening gown said it as if inadvertently, and added, he is equal to your parents, so doesn't that mean he is also your? She deliberately covered her lips, pretending to be surprised at having said something wrong, and said half of the word father and mother, and then smiled and apologized. Sorry, I'm rude, I said the wrong thing. Many people heard her words and covered their mouths and laughed secretly. But no one blamed the woman in the purple evening gown for her words and deeds. They had always known that she was a bold person. It was common for her to say such things to tease others. Everyone just thought it was a joke. The faces of the group of second generation people instantly turned ugly. Letting this country bumpkin sit at the same table with their parents meant that he was a generation older than them, the generation of their parents, and invisibly lower than this country bumpkin from the suicide slum, which made them very dissatisfied. Some second generation people who did not participate in the discussion and were more self-respecting could not help but change color. This country bumpkin was able to join the family and sit in the 18th seat. This was undoubtedly too embarrassing for them. What qualifications does he have? Chapter 103, Adder Edge. In the magnificent banquet hall, Badi's arrival attracted everyone's attention. He paused slightly at the door, his eyes swept around habitually. His sight swept over a group of second generation young men who were angry and glaring at him with slightly ugly faces. Those who could quietly call Badi here were all a group of second generation young men who liked to attract attention, but had little ability and bad temper, and thought they were noble. Those who were truly capable and qualified to inherit their parents' property also had a certain level of cultivation, and would not call someone so blatantly, even if they really looked down on them in their hearts. They would not say it out loud. But when he heard the bold and avant-garde woman in the purple evening dress speak, his face changed slightly. Being able to sit in the 18th seat of the family at such a young age, he was much better than them. Once he takes the 18th seat in the family, it means that the 17 local families in Metropolis will escort his company. The business channels, various media, discussions, and some government-related relationships will be fully opened. His company will go to the next level, and the capital can basically double, and he will become an upper-class person in Metropolis. The family has the ability to create an upper-class person. Of course, it takes a lot of effort. Everyone wins together. Take out some of the products of Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited, such as heart disease specific drugs, sildenafil, profitable skincare products, etc., to serve as the entry bricks of the family and implement the goal of everyone's win-win situation. In Metropolis, not many people can refuse the family, and there are no people who dare not join the family invitation. Because if you don't join, you have to accept the sniping from the 17 family companies, various aspects of drug supervision, hospitals, distributors, and media channels. Many family members in the family have been rooted in the local area, and the relationship is complicated. Under the sniping, it is enough to make the newly famous Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited bankrupt and disappear, and then take some technology and develop it yourself. Therefore, it is best to join the family and win together. Some of them think that the family does not need to go to such great lengths to invite Badi to join. They can just take action and snatch the technology. There is no need to create a country bumpkin to become the upper class. They have been in the upper position for a long time and really look down on people born in the slums. Badi's eyes swept across the purple evening dress woman who spoke to him. The woman had a curvy figure and a bold and avant-garde evening dress that made her sexy and seductive. The exposed skin was white and tempting. This was a little goblin who deliberately seduced people, and she was a self-centered goblin who liked to find trouble and cause trouble. When Badi's eyes turned to her, she raised her wine glass and toasted Badi from a distance. He would not think that this purple evening dress woman spoke for him to show her goodwill. The purple evening dress woman flirted with a group of second generations casually and felt a little bored. It was her interest and her inner pleasure to flirt with them, not for anyone. She was just a superior who casually said a few words, seemingly speaking for Badi, saying a few words that did not hurt her and had nothing to do with her. If you want to be grateful, then she would stand high and accept your gratitude. This was just the subconscious style of a superior. If you were a lower status than her, you would indeed be slightly grateful for her speaking for you, but according to Badi's true identity and what he had to do, this woman in a purple evening dress was only worthy of looking up to him. Badi did not say a word, and his face did not change when he glanced at her figure, which made her hold the glass slightly paused. She was ignored. A trace of surprise flashed through her mind. Was it ignorance or stupidity? Such an ignored glance passed by her. No response. Then, the purple evening dress woman's eyes showed interest, and the corners of her mouth curved up. Interesting. She looked at Badi and sipped the champagne with good manners. At this moment, she felt like a domineering president in her heart, with a curved corner of her mouth, and she was interested in the person who worked hard from the suicide slums with a faint smile. An asymmetric status. The superior is interested in the inferior and sees what surprises he has for him. Badi just glanced around briefly. If possible, he hoped to find a few mature women with plump figures, regular fitness, and good endurance to spend a good night with. In his home, the secretary killer was also waiting for him to exercise his control. He could control himself not to kill them, and could make any woman reach the highest peak of pleasure. Of course, he still dared not shoot, but it was much better than before. It is no exaggeration to say that he could beat 10 or 100 sexy beauties. Badi regarded this feast as a hunting to relax his mind. He was waiting for the response of the men arranged in Kansas. He never cared about this event set up for him, let alone joining the family. He needed to relax and prepare for everything to meet Joel. Badi swept his eyes and set a few targets. Just as he was about to take a step and appreciate the beautiful and local women in the metropolis, a path opened up in the crowd. People around raised their glasses and bowed to salute. Some very capable second-generation people also looked at Adarej, the head of the family, who was walking out with excitement. Adarej was a black man. He was not very strong. His well-fitting suit showed off his middle-aged manliness. He had a few well-trimmed grey beards on his chin. He looked quite calm and composed. When he smiled, he had a natural sense of intimacy. In the 1980s, when racial discrimination was prevalent and discrimination was becoming increasingly strong, a black man could become the head of a family in a first-tier international city. He had to endure more pressure, discussion, and social disapproval. All these obstacles were much greater than those of ordinary white people. Now that he was here and became the head of the family, it was conceivable how much ability and skill he had to achieve this. Adarej was almost a legend among black people and a famous example of success in the metropolis. Facing him, most white people could not feel superior to him in the theory of racial superiority, but felt ashamed. Welcome, Bamulodi. Adarej walked steadily with a hint of eager expectation, giving Badi, the guest, great face. As he walked towards him, he not only welcomed him warmly, but also opened his arms, wanting to hug Badi tightly and express friendship. There was no sign that this person would temporarily change his plan to kill Badi and suggest taking him into the family and swallowing up all the drugs of his Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. When he opened his arms and was about to hug Badi, Badi's 5 fingers were like steel, and he put his hand on his chest to stop his momentum. I don't like hugs. Chapter 104 Picking a mature woman. I don't like hugs. Badi's face was indifferent. He didn't feel anything when hugging a man, let alone this kind of smiling tiger-like character. He smiled and said he was a good brother in front of people, but stabbed him in the back and took his property. With the power Badi now has, he doesn't need to pretend to be nice. In short, Adarej is not qualified and is not taken seriously by him. Although he may have some capital power in the upper class of the metropolis, for Badi, if he really wants to deal with him, it's just a matter of a glance. No matter how much money ordinary people have in this world, it's useless without power. In the past, this world may be represented by money, power, and status, but now, after Badi came, he punched into Continental, which is called power. Therefore, Badi didn't have any feelings for Adarej. He didn't have a good impression, nor did he have a bad impression. Anyway, he was just a person he could run over, so there was no need to have so many relationships and feelings. Badi always leaves this kind of business affairs to little Luther. Only when they resort to means other than business will Badi consider finding someone to take the blame and send a bomb to their family to make them die early. For example, his secretary is a killer hired by them, which is already outside of business, so Badi came here to disintegrate the entire family. Oh, is it because I'm not a beautiful and sexy woman? Badi refused Adareg's hug, but Adareg didn't care, just smiled with a big white tooth, laughed, and turned away as a joke. After saying that, he spread his hands and made a joke without any embarrassment on his face, and his demeanor was calm and natural. But the various family members and second generations behind him frowned. How rude. As expected, he came from the suicide slums, he has no manners. I was relieved to see that Mr. Edge didn't hug him, so as not to get a bad vibe. This is why the upper class is separated from the lower class. The lower class people don't know how to be cultured or polite. They are incredibly vulgar. Not only the various family members in the second generation were talking in low voices. A large number of women who had originally looked at Badi with sparkling eyes could not help but look a little dull, shook their heads slightly, and were very disappointed with him. Too arrogant. Did you think you were in the suicide slums? Come here to act up. Show your personality? Well, it's just for show after all. What a pity. I guess Mr. Edge is very disappointed with him. He doesn't know any manners, and directly lost his face. I guess Mr. Edge will reconsider. Inviting a rough man into the family is a violation of the rules of the upper class. Many people were talking in low voices, and their words were very unfriendly to Badi. Even the bold and avant-garde woman in a purple evening gown frowned and said nothing. She looked at Badi, not knowing what he was up to. Was he ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth? Or was he showing a foolish personality? Some people shook their heads and sighed for the possibility that he might lose an opportunity to enter the family. If this opportunity was his, how great it would be. They would definitely cooperate well and be ecstatic, even if they had to kneel down. This was a life-changing fate. How dare you go against Adareg's wishes? Don't think that Adareg was joking with a calm face. That was just a cover-up. Adareg himself was a black man who was discriminated against. He had come all the way to the position of the head of the family, and his heart was darker than his appearance. What he hated most was that someone discriminated against his skin color. Any abnormal remarks would lead to his silent revenge. Former family member Noah's family is like this. With rapid development, they accidentally offended Adareg and said a few words about his skin color. He and his family members secretly annexed his technology park and the entire Noah company, causing Noah's family to be ruined and miserable. The head of the family could not accept it and jumped off the company building to commit suicide. He is a very cruel man who directly forced people to death. Badi rejected his friendly hug like this, which was as if he was saying that black people were not worthy of hugging me. Although Badi did not mean that, there must be a not in Adareg's heart, and revenge was only a matter of time. Alas, it's a pity. Young people who don't know how to seize opportunities. Young people are always young and energetic. It's ridiculous to think that they can make great achievements after walking out of the suicide slum. It's a pity for the older generation. Their status and position are not as good as Adareg. They have to live under his feet. It's a pity for Badi. An opportunity to enter the family may be lost like this. An opportunity to be called an upper class person is lost like this. The opportunity presented to a rough man from the suicide slums made their blood boil, and they were angry. It was really infuriating to see such a waste of opportunity to become a superior person. Badi had sharp ears. Although the voice was small, he could hear everything that was said. He felt ridiculous. He had never wanted to join any family. These guys who thought they were upper class nobles defined him as a young man who didn't know what was good for him and didn't know the height of the world. It really made people speechless. Who didn't know the height of the world? Let's have a drink. This party is for you. Let me introduce some beauties to you and spend a pleasant evening. Adareg said jokingly when he failed to hug him. His face was dark and he showed his white teeth when he was joking. He was sincere and kind, without a trace of affectation. It felt like an old friend who had known each other for many years. He was thin and half a head shorter than Badi. Badi stood in front of him, his eyes lowered, looking down at him, which made the head of the family very dissatisfied, but he did not show it on his face. He smiled and narrowed his eyes. No need, I will naturally ask if there are any beautiful women who agree to spend a night of ecstasy with me. Badi was indifferent and ignored his goodwill. He took a glass of champagne and raised the glass to everyone like a gentleman. His aura was just like the host, greeting everyone. Adoreg's dark face twitched unnaturally, but he still smiled. He was scheming and cunning, and he was embarrassed by Badi again and again. This was too ungrateful. He really thought he was still in the suicide slum. He narrowed his eyes, his smile did not show his teeth, and turned to look at Badi's back. The people around him laughed coldly, looking at Badi with unfriendly eyes, and their eyes followed his figure. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Badi walked up to a beautiful woman. She was petite and plump, with snow-white skin showing through her black hollowed-out clothes. Her mature and beautiful aura made people intoxicated. This was a mature and charming mature woman. Bang, with the sound of wine glasses colliding gently and crisply, Badi took his glass and took the initiative to touch her glass and said with a smile, "You have a good temperament. I want to spend a night with you. How about it?" The mature woman was shocked. She opened her mouth slightly and looked at him in shock. She couldn't believe it. It was not because of the straightforward language, but because her husband was there. This man with such a fascinating appearance dared to tease her like this. Is this looking for death? The trivial voices of the whole banquet disappeared. Everyone stared at Badi and saw that he was so unrestrained and chose this mature woman. The faces of many family members became gloomy. The band on the scene played a background music that gradually became high. Bamulodi. Yadarech's roar echoed in the banquet hall. Chapter 105. Banquet host. Quiet, you're stopping me from inviting the lady. Badi shouted coldly, scolding without giving any face. He was taller than the host of the banquet, Adareg, and he looked down on people like a mountain, with a majestic aura. He had been a general on Krypton, and his status above 10,000 people gave him a majesty that could not be despised, which made people's hearts palpitate and numb. This was more of a master than the host, and his domineering attitude could not be violated. The banquet itself was set up for Badi, so why couldn't I be the master? The gradually rising background music in the hall set off his relaxed and calm majesty, which was unparalleled at the time. Everyone seemed to be strangled by the throat, staring at him in disbelief. In this family banquet venue, an outsider, a lowly pariah from the suicide slum, dared to be so rampant and domineering, more of a master than the host, and scolded the head of the family without any politeness. This is looking for death. Many people began to look unfriendly, staring at Badi gloomily. Many members who had previously agreed with Adareg to invite Badi into the family saw this scene, and the head of the family, Adareg, was humiliated again and again, and they couldn't help but change their minds. This man is not qualified to enter the family. Respecting the elders and respecting those who have more capital than you should be done, and they also came in this way. Now Badi is so arrogant that he dares to scold the head of the family. Once his status is higher or equal to that of himself, wouldn't he be arrogant to the limit? At that time, they still have status? Adarech's face was even uglier, and his black face twitched even darker. The guest he invited was more like the host than himself. To be honest, Adareg had never been so unrestrained in treating his wife. He could have achieved what he has today. In fact, it was inseparable from the power of his wife's family. Normally, he and his wife treated each other with respect, and there was no excitement or spark. He always felt inferior to his wife in front of her, and his intimacy was not even as good as that with his secretary and lover. But no matter what, this was his wife, and being treated like this in public, as a man, no matter how cunning he was, he could not tolerate Badi repeatedly ignoring him. Bamulodi, this banquet was originally held for you to enter the 18th seat of the family. Adarech's face was gloomy, and there was suppressed anger in his eyes. This man was too ungrateful. Adarech's words immediately caused an uproar among the crowd. So it's true. He is indeed a member of the 18th seat. How could such a guy become a member of the family? Didn't you hear what Mr. Edge said? It was originally. That is to say, this stupid guy actually used his unworthy arrogance to personally ruin his chance to become an upper class person. Haha, he was not qualified to join the family. He can't expect us. He's finished. The moment he leaves this banquet, the family will make an effort. The drugs produced by his Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited, including the heart disease specific medicine, sildenafil, and a series of skincare products will all be completely blocked and disappear from the metropolis. Even more, the Food and Drug Administration may even ask for a ban and confiscation. He's completely finished. Many family members gloated over the misfortune. They looked down on Badi for being born in the suicide slum. Previously, they reached the intention of recruiting Badi to join the 18th seat of the family under the advice and lobbying of Adarej. Now even Adarej has objections, so they will not want to recruit Badi into the family anymore. Seeing that Badi had ruined his own opportunity, they really wanted to open a glass of champagne to celebrate. What an ignorant person. He didn't know what kind of future he had ruined. They gently shook their wine glasses with a smile on their lips and looked at Badi coldly with disdain. However, they were stunned. Badi raised his wine glass high and his white suit set off his sculptural and resolute appearance. He was very masculine and his smile and words were very charming. He was also the center of the party. You are too noisy. Since the party is held for me, I'm the center and the host. He smiled and raised his wine glass. The white suit set off his white jade-like face. He was masculine and calm. No one believed that he was a vulgar person from the suicide slum. There was more jealousy, envy, hatred, and slander. Many women who were not deeply involved with the family were attracted to him. Even some women who were not afraid of the family were attracted to him and had the intention of having a one-night stand. Regardless of capital, status, class, wealth, and only considering appearance, body, and strength, Badi really made women's hearts move. Badi once again provoked Adarech's nerves. His eyebrows and eyes were already a little fierce. It had been a long time since anyone could ignore him like this, especially a low-class bitch from the slums. Adarechi was also one of the lower classes in his early years, but now it is different. No one can ignore him casually, molesting his wife in front of him and embarrassing himself. Without Adarechi saying anything, a family member saw his face and his eyes were fierce. This was the rhythm of preparing to kill Badi. We have investigated that you have bad conduct, are vulgar and arrogant, and have no education. You are not qualified to join the family. A middle-aged man wearing a black suit with a knot at his neck. He is a businessman in the metropolitan clothing industry, worth a lot of money, and has been very strong recently, with a great momentum of rise. He saw the expression on Adarechi's face, took the initiative to speak, and secretly glanced at Adarechi, and found that he was showing admiration in his eyes. It was obvious that he had flattered the right person. His waist vertebrae straightened, and he became taller and more confident. That's right, you are a piece of shit, and you are not worthy of joining the family with the assets of the company. We will notify the Food and Drug Administration sooner or later to deal with the banned drugs you produce. Another family member came out and shouted at Badi. Then several people came out with wine glasses and criticized Badi, saying that he was useless except for his appearance, and that he was barbaric and vulgar, a natural rough man, and that he should always be a low-level person. Adarechi had a calm face, with his hands behind his back, looking at Badi calmly, and said nothing. The momentum created by the crowd was so high that even a mountain could not stop it. Chapter 106 Too much. The atmosphere was very strange and lively. Many family members criticized Badi and belittled him. They said that he was just a good-looking trash, a scum, and his character and morality were really different from those upper-class people. These upper-class people spoke with sharp words. They did not directly scold the street, family, or organs, but compared him with themselves everywhere, comparing sewage and mud to high-rise buildings, and using mythical arguments to compare him to a vain and low-class person. Now that he was abandoned by the head of the family and could not get a seat in the family, he would only be a gangster and do nothing. Among them, some second-generation young men were the most active. They didn't like Badi's appearance in the first place. Now that they knew that their fathers were not polite to him, they became more active. Their words were not dirty, but the inner meaning was contempt, belittlement, and ridicule that any ordinary man could not bear. After learning that Badi would not be included in the 18th seat of the family, almost all women shook their heads slightly, with regret in their eyes. This outstanding man is finished. From today on, there will be no place for him in the metropolis. He can only go back to the suicide slum. Almost everyone thinks so. Badi drank champagne calmly, his face calm, as if he could stand still in the face of thousands of troops. His eyes swept calmly over the many family members who were joking and talking, calm and steady. Seeing this scene, it was really funny. In the past, he faced people with high IQs, playing games with each other, fighting between life and death, and he didn't know how many people he had killed. But just a slight change of scene, he turned out to be like the mud in their mouths. Or, no matter which world, the eyes of creatures are so superficial and ignorant, which makes people helpless. Really? I don't know how high the sky is. Don't pretend to be calm. Alas, if I were you, I would have crawled out the door long ago. A young man wearing a purple suit, a big back hair with wax, a slightly raised face, and a mocking smile on the corner of his mouth sighed and said. He saw that Badi was very calm and calm to all the words, thinking that he was just holding on. In this situation, being abandoned by the family, being pointed at by thousands of people, and the beauties present sighed and shook their heads. What kind of shock is that? It is enough to make people regret and go crazy. There is no point in pretending. Maybe he is reluctant to leave. He has never attended such a banquet in his life. No wonder he is reluctant to leave. Some people agreed, and many people were watching the show. There were smiles on their lips, and some shook their heads, sighing that Badi didn't know the world. He didn't know what he was facing. Really? He didn't know the world. As expected, the people in the suicide slums are ignorant, and killed their opportunities. How stupid. It's a pity. I still say the same thing, Mr. Badi. This was originally a banquet for you to take your seat. Now that you have offended everyone, you must apologize to them one by one. Otherwise, I will be in a difficult position. After all, you still need everyone's approval to take your seat in the family. With his hands behind his back, Aderechi had a calm demeanor that gave off the aura of a high position and power. He shook his head slightly at Badi, as if he was thinking about Badi. He walked forward, his steps were steady and slow. When he passed by, people automatically gave way to him out of respect. Compared with Badi, who was pointed at by thousands of troops, he was particularly superior and made people obedient. Especially his wife, who passed by Badi with a plump figure and a fragrant breeze, came to his side with a noble and classical atmosphere. He then stretched out his arm and let his wife hold his arm, looking at Badi with a faint smile. Invisibly, he looked at Badi with a faint smile. At this moment, his height, which was half a head shorter than Badi, also stood tall and strong, as if he was on the top of a mountain that was out of reach of people. Even the people below could not see him, nor did they want to see him. Life is like this. What he has, and what he controls, are different from Badi. He has unattainable wealth and a woman that Badi cannot get. Of course, this desire is nonsense. Badi just wants a night of spring. This mature woman has the temperament of aristocrats and classical charm, which makes him feel comfortable, so he invited her. But this does not prevent Aderechi from looking down on Badi in his heart, and everyone around him laughs at Badi like a monkey. The status, money, reputation, and power they have are not something that can be touched by the suicide slum. He smiled faintly, let his wife hold his arm, and looked at Badi, who seemed to care about him, and asked him to apologize. But he was watching a clown being watched and performing. Well, Mr. Edge is right, you have to apologize to us. Some family members cleverly understood Aderechi's intention. They wanted him to bow his head and apologize to every family member. They wanted to insult him and humiliate him severely. He didn't want to show his face. He still wanted to join the family, humiliate him, and humiliate him severely in public. It would be best if he went crazy. He dared to humiliate Mr. Edge and flirt with his wife in public. He really didn't know how to live or die. He should be humiliated, and it would be best if he knelt down and licked the shoes of himself and others, and lived without dignity. Those who oppose the family should be treated like this. The family members all understood Aderechi's intention. Yes, that's right. You were rude at the banquet. You have to apologize to each of us. Yes, you have to bow solemnly to apologize. 90 degrees. You really? How can you do this? Mr. Badi, ignore them. My shoes are stained with wine. Please wipe them off for me. It's over. We are still very reasonable after all. Some second generation young masters became excited. In front of everyone, they wanted a man who made them so envious to bow his head and humiliated him. In front of so many beautiful ladies, mature women, they couldn't raise their heads. They were so happy. A group of second generation young masters got the silent consent of their parents, and they were even more arrogant. They strongly demanded Badi to apologize, and were ready to humiliate him in various ways. They demanded Badi to kneel down and apologize. Otherwise, after leaving the banquet, the family would attack him in various ways, and he would not be able to survive in the suicide slums. The bold and avant-garde woman in a purple evening dress frowned, unable to bear it. Badi's behavior was not out of line, but he just didn't give face to the head of the family. But there was no need to say that he insulted the entire family. He had to kneel down to apologize to everyone and lick the upper of the shoe. This was undoubtedly too much, but she didn't say anything, just frowned her beautiful eyebrows and wanted to see how Badi would deal with it with a slightly interesting look in her eyes. Struggle and shout, carry it and leave, or yell and beat him, or leave directly? Badi's mouth curled up, and he looked at everyone who was fiercely asking him to kneel down. His ears were filled with his words of apology, and his eyes finally turned to Adorechi. Adorechi smiled in response, and the smile was very gentle, very cunning, dark-faced, and dark-hearted. But his wife, who was standing next to him, looked very aristocratic because of her position, and there was a trace of pity in her eyes. Suddenly, the ground suddenly rang with a heavy sound of a cane stomping on the ground. There was a loud bang, louder than all the others combined, echoing in the banquet hall, and ringing in everyone's ears, like a thump in their heartbeats. Instantly, the banquet hall was silent, and even the band stopped playing. A solemn and old voice sounded, and it made people think that the owner of the voice was a fussy old man who was scolding his juniors. Yaderej, you're going too far. Chapter 107 Nobles. Yaderej, you've gone too far. A solemn, old, and steady voice sounded. Everyone turned their heads and looked in the direction of the voice, feeling surprised. An old man wearing a slim silver-edged tuxedo, with a thin body, grey hair, loose skin and wrinkles on his face, and a serious look in his eyes, looked like a very graceful and elegant aristocratic old man. He walked out of the crowd step by step with his cane, poking the ground with a sound, and walked out. Seeing this old man, everyone dared not make a sound for a while, and the eyes of several second generations who actively asked Badi to apologize also froze for a moment and kept silent. He is the head of the Calvin family, which has been standing in the metropolis since its establishment. He is quite famous in the metropolis, and is most famous for his family's rigid aristocratic style, solemn, silent, and elegant. He is also a member of the family. Adorej felt a little strange. He didn't know why the head of the Calvin family came out to scold him at this time. Earlier, it was him and several other rigid old antique nobles who disagreed with Badi joining the family. Now, he said that he was too much. He thought about it in his heart. He was very cautious about this old man. If it was not necessary, even he, the head of the family, would not want to offend him. Adorej was able to become the head of the family. It seemed very glorious. In fact, secretly, he still needed the support of these ancient nobles to maintain the integrity and style of the family. There were also many upper-level networks in the metropolis, and this old man was the one who could not be offended the most. The history of the metropolis can be traced back to 1542, and the Calvin family has experienced such a long history. It is one of the few real nobles in the metropolis. Unlike Adorej, who rose in modern times, this family is rooted in the metropolis, and its deep influence is incomparable to him. Instantly, Adorej's eyes flashed with apology, and he apologized to the head of the Calvin family, saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Calvin, I invited someone I shouldn't have invited," which made the situation awkward. Adorej was a cunning man, and the head of the Calvin family obviously saw his intention to humiliate Badi and got angry, which was obviously not in line with the noble style and bearing. He used a few second generations who liked to make trouble to make Badi apologize and humiliate him, and the head of the Colvin family was upset, which was normal. Adarej apologized straightforwardly and generously, and no one could say that he was rude. The head of the Colvin family was holding a black cane with spikes and silver inlays, which was an exquisite and classical style. He stopped and looked at Adarej with sharp eyes, saying, "You should apologize to Mr. Badi, not to me. Put away your vain thoughts, Adarej." The head of the Colvin family spoke harshly, scolding him in public, not giving him any face. Adarej's face froze slightly, his body stiffened, and he was still annoyed. He felt uncomfortable with his heart being stuffy and his blood being blocked. He didn't expect the head of the Colvin family to be so harsh and to teach him a lesson in public, asking him to put away his vain thoughts, which pierced his heart nakedly, especially when he said this in public. The impact was too great. Adarej's eyes narrowed slightly, and his breathing was only stagnant for a moment, and then returned to normal. Everyone almost subconsciously glared. They didn't expect that the head of the family would be scolded by a real nobleman for being vain. Being scolded like this in public would basically make the head of the family lose face. In the future, when others mention Adarej, they will probably have to mention the word vain. From the mouth of a real, solemn, and unsmiling nobleman, a noble recognized by the entire metropolitan upper class, that kind of recognition can almost define Adarej vain. The head of the Colvin family just paused for a moment. His noble upbringing required him to face the person when speaking, and give courtesy to the person opposite him. Then he walked towards Badi with his exquisite and classical cane. When he came to Badi, he apologized with an apologetic look. "Mr. Tretescu, I'm sorry to have troubled you." Tretescu was Badi's last name. Everyone knew that Badi's last name was Tretescu, a rather strange last name. The head of the Colvin family is very cultured and abides by the ethics of the nobility. Even if he apologizes to Badi, people will not be surprised, because this is the culture that a true noble should have. Unlike Adarej, whose forehead seems to be engraved with, "If you have money, you are aristocrat." The kind of education cultivated in an aristocratic family, the cultivation accumulated over the years, is not something that can be contained by being rich. "Just call me Badi, it doesn't matter, I don't care." Badi responded with a faint smile. He took a glass of champagne, handed it to the head of the Colvin family, and clinked a glass with him. Badi still operated calmly and freely, and got along with the head of the Colvin family freely, which gave many people goosebumps. Few people can act freely in such a rigid, serious, and unsmiling way. The head of the Colvin family does not put much pressure on people, but in front of him, facing his straight back, gentle eyes and good manners, the temperament cultivated in an aristocratic family makes people feel ashamed and difficult to get along with. Seeing that Badi was facing the head of the Colvin family with ease, many people were secretly surprised. It seemed that the two of them had an inexplicable harmony. They were not ashamed of themselves, not unnatural, and were completely calm and composed, as if no matter who came, they were not panicked. It has been like this since the beginning of the banquet, which made many people have other thoughts in their hearts. Pretend. Keep pretending. See how you keep pretending. Several second generations who kept silent looked at each other unkindly. They just scolded Badi and asked Badi to apologize, but now they dared not speak. The head of the Colvin family made people feel very uncomfortable. They felt that Badi was just pretending in front of the head of the Colvin family, waiting for him to make a fool of himself, and then scold him severely. From Badi's appearance to now, they have always been disgusted with this person who looks much better than themselves and others. "Has little Luther come to you?" Badi asked after clinking glasses with the head of the Colvin family, and taking a sip. The eyes of the head of the Colvin family suddenly brightened, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to relax a little. He nodded and said, "Yes, Luther is really a genius. I agree." The banquet was very quiet. Everyone was waiting for the conversation between Badi and the head of the Colvin family. When they heard that the head of the Colvin family had promised Badi something, everyone at the banquet felt a little strange and puzzled. Adarej's face was a little stern. He stared at the conversation between the two people. He felt very bad. He felt that he was gradually losing control. In the past, even if there was a noble like the head of the Colvin family in the family, he could follow his intentions, achieve his goals, and become the head of the family. But now, suddenly, a trace of irritation rose in his heart, and he had a premonition of losing control. Badi gently wiped the transparent wine glass with his fingers. The champagne was clear and shook slightly in his hand. He glanced at the champagne in the wine glass and slowly raised his eyes to the face of the head of the Colvin family. He looked at him with invisible pressure and said, "So, you didn't show up just now, and you have been observing me, right?" The head of the Colvin family's face stagnated slightly. He was indeed like that. He had never met Badi. It was always little Luther who came forward and had contact with him several times, which impressed him. Just now, he really wanted to observe Badi's personality in the crowd, so as to understand his psychology and gain greater benefits in future cooperation. That's why he showed up when everyone was looking down on him and asking him to apologize excessively, intending to save him and give him a small favor. But it was obvious that he couldn't understand Badi's psychology. "I don't like your style and behavior. Little Luther promised you -half," Badi said. Hearing Badi's words, the head of the Colvin family changed his face, and his hand that supported the cane trembled. There was a little panic in his pupils. He slightly adjusted his breathing, which began to pant, and said, "I'm sorry, I should have stood up and made it clear earlier. I was not honest enough." After saying that, he bowed slightly to express his apology to Badi. This made everyone who had been paying attention to them stare with their eyes, and the confusion on their faces became even more strange. The head of the Colvin family's apology seemed panic. Everyone almost thought they were hallucinating, and some even rubbed their eyes. They had never seen the stern Colvin family head panic. This was hard to imagine. Why would he apologize to a person from the suicide slum like this? He was panicking. Adareja's face was already a little ugly. What kind of cooperation did they reach? Chapter 108. Bamulodi, what on earth have you done? A verbal apology is useless to me. Badi was calm and tall. His white suit made him look clean and elegant. His tall and majestic body was full of strength. When his eyes opened and closed, he carried invisible pressure. He was powerful, mentally powerful, and his aura made people feel as steady as a mountain. If you don't stare, it will be fine. But once you stare, you will feel as heavy as a mountain. Although he was calm, his eyes that looked at people with a faint smile, with the pressure of a smile, made people feel breathless. The head of the Colvin family felt oppressed. Although his old body was still straight, the wrinkles on his face had increased with the passage of time. There were already many. He had taken good care of his health, but he still couldn't stop the footsteps of the god of death. His body was more tired and worse every year. Now because of his little trick, he directly reduced half of what he had obtained. This was simply a disaster. His breathing became heavier, and he almost couldn't suppress his trembling body, but he had always grown up in an aristocratic family with strict rules. After several decades, he subconsciously controlled his cultivation and showed good manners. Half. I was not honest at first, and the other half, it is not objectionable, the head of the Colvin family said with a reluctant look. He could see the general situation clearly, not only because of his own lifespan, but also because it was the future. The prosperity and survival of the family was actually in the hands of the man in front of him. Because the future that Luther showed him, was indeed in his hands. Even if the conditions were a little more stringent, he was willing to accept it. No matter what, he had to climb on the boat of Badi and let the entire Colvin family and Badi advance and retreat together. The people at the banquet almost cried out. They stared at the two people. The head of the Colvin family actually looked unnatural. Facing the cooperation with Badi easily said that half of the benefits would be reduced. What kind of benefits were these? Even if it was reduced by half, the head of the Colvin family did not argue with reason, but accepted it reluctantly. Just because a few second-generation young masters at the scene went a little too far and asked Badi to kneel down and apologize, and the head of the Colvin family was a little late to stop him, he actually casually cut half of the benefits. What kind of cooperation is this? It is unimaginable. Can such an unequal cooperation still be called cooperation? There is no such domineering cooperation. Can Bamulodi be so domineering? Several second generations who were just at hello Badi stared with their eyes and opened their mouths in disbelief. How is it possible? How can this cheap, handsome guy from the slums cooperate with the head of the Colvin family and take the lead? This is too domineering. What kind of cooperation can reduce general benefits? They couldn't believe it. Some of them had been insulting Badi as a low-level pariah in the suicide slum. In the end, he bit his tongue and didn't dare to call him a pariah. Being able to cooperate with the head of the Colvin family and reduce his general benefits was beyond his imagination. In comparison, he was the pariah. This shocked him beyond words. Not everyone can face the head of the Colvin family calmly. However, it was not the head of the Colvin family who took the lead. It was Badi who casually said to reduce it by half, and then the head of the Colvin family really accepted this? This is simply ridiculous. Several second generations felt a little dizzy. This must not be true. Adarej's heart skipped a beat and his breath was held. What kind of cooperation is this? Bamulodi won over the head of the Colvin family? His heart sank to the bottom, and anger surged up again, his face expressionless. What on earth did the head of the Colvin family do behind my back? This unknown scratched Adarej's heart and made him frown. The head of the Colvin family has always been smart and capable, and is known for his forward-looking vision. He came from the previous generation of the nobles of the family, and changed and became new. That generation of change from nobles to family promoted social integration, capital integration, and promoted lower-level personnel to the upper level, and even took over some official affairs. However, he advocated promotion, so that the family would prosper more in the metropolis and leap to the top level. Everyone in the family thinks that they are upper class people, and they also behave like upper class people. Some people even hate to enter the family, and there is a reason for this. The family is a top level wealthy family, and it is one of the best in the capital world of the metropolis. It can be said that the head of the Colvin family has made an indelible contribution to the family's current status. Even if Adarej has become the head of the family in recent years, he dare not move the head of the Colvin family casually, because he is too deeply involved. The Colvin family has stood in the metropolis for hundreds of years. Its roots are so deep that it is difficult to dig. Now it is cooperating with Badi, which makes Adarej feel embarrassed. He thinks that the Colvin family head is dissatisfied with him. It is clear that the Colvin family head did not agree with Badi to join the family before. He spent a lot of effort to vote by majority, to pull Badi into the family, and make Badi a member of his subordinates. But seeing Badi come to the banquet so calmly, treating him without any joy, without a trace of gratitude, thanking him for bringing him into the family, his sensitive self-esteem felt insulted, which obviously did not take him seriously. So he decided not to let him enter the family, to let Badi suffer humiliation here, so that he could understand the boundary between him and the upper class. Now, Badi suddenly cooperated with the Colvin family head, and Badi was still the leader. It seemed that the Colvin family head was willing to give up half of his interests. This simply made Adarej angry. You too? Are you kidding me, Adarej? When the head of the Colvin family agreed to half of it, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. A figure stood out from the crowd. His short hair was as white as a needle, his beard was black and white, and he had a black and white mixed color scheme. He was a bit strong and firm. He was wearing a black suit and his face was also a bit pampered, but he couldn't resist the light wrinkles of time. He stepped out and came to Badi. He wanted to ask loudly, but he suppressed his doubts. His voice was originally loud and powerful, but at this moment he couldn't help but suppress the overly loud voice and asked in a calm and suppressed tone. Half. Luther told me 20 years ago. He asked with a look of doubt on his face. Although his body was well trained, his face had deep wrinkles. Judging from his appearance, he looked to be in his 60s. The final decision is made by me. You come out second and get 40%. You can choose not to cooperate with me. Badi looked at him and said calmly, waiting for his decision. Unexpectedly, this vigorous and strong middle-aged man was shocked. His face was blank and heartbroken for a moment, and he didn't even hesitate, and said directly and decisively, no, I cooperate. I should have stopped it earlier. It's my fault. We cooperate. This is like a thunderclap in the sky. This vigorous and strong middle-aged man is also a member of the family, the head of the Dodge family, who is only one level lower than the Calvin family. He is also an old nobleman, and often disagrees with the Calvin family. Just like McDonald's and KFC, they are a rival that has been competing for many years. It can be said that the two are mortal enemies, and now they are competing to cooperate with Badi. This is like a thunderclap in the sky. The people at the banquet burst into an uproar. What's going on? What does that man have that's worth two old nobles cooperating with him? What's going on? What's going on? Two old nobles are vying to cooperate with him, and they're all willing to participate, just for the sake of cutting their own interests. What is it? Is it worth making such a big sacrifice? Everyone burst into laughter, too shocked to believe. The Dodge family and the Calvin family have always been two rivals in the family. They have never cooperated together. They are natural enemies. It started hundreds of years ago. It was their grandfather's generation that started the competition, suppressing each other and trying to defeat each other. Now they are vying to cooperate with Badi, which makes the family members who are familiar with the situation of the two families open their eyes in shock. How is this possible? If the Dodge family and the Calvin family cooperate, their ancestors will not let them go. They will compete to cooperate with Badi. This is impossible. Unless they don't cooperate with Badi, the other party will be defeated sooner or later and suppressed to the point of being unable to take care of themselves. What magic does Bamulodi have? Can he make them compete to cooperate? The family members knew the inside story very well. The two families were rivals and mortal enemies. They would not cooperate at all, let alone business interests. This was a competition between two ancient noble families. It was faith, spirit, and will, not some dirty money like capital. What they adhered to was to use capital to suppress the other party. They would never cooperate no matter what. But today, they actually competed to show goodwill and cooperate with the same person. This was simply shocking. Several second generations were already dumbfounded and speechless. They felt a chill in their spines rising from their buttocks to their necks, and their hearts fell into an ice cave. They and others seemed to have offended Bamulodi. They shivered with cold and felt him in front of their eyes. They seemed to have provoked a great existence. It was unimaginable that once the Dodge family and the Calvin family joined forces to suppress them, not to mention them, even their fathers could not bear such anger. What would happen then? Even if they had to beg on the street or live in a suicide slum, it would not be surprising. This made them feel cold in their hearts. Adareg's pupils contracted, and he couldn't help shaking in shock as he held his wife's arm. What on earth was it that was worthy of the two old noble enemies to compete for cooperation? Looking at the appearance, if they didn't compete for cooperation, they would be suppressed. Originally, Adareg thought that this was just the Calvin family head's dissatisfaction with his behavior, and now the Dodge family head couldn't wait to come forward to ask, which simply subverted his cognition. Because the Dodge family head was on his side, with deep interests, it was impossible for him to betray him. How could this be? What on earth didn't he know? Adareg's face was dark, and he couldn't keep calm. His eyes tightened in horror as he looked at the calm and composed Badi, who was dressed in white and had a slender figure. He couldn't help but feel a heavy pressure in his heart. Bamulodi, what on earth did you do? Exclamation mark. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, Luther's Arrangement. Banquet. It was magnificent, spacious, with crystal chandeliers on the top, reflecting a bright and brilliant light. The walls were carved with beams, or hung with luxurious decorations, all of which were expensive and set off the magnificence of the scene. But now, at this moment, something extremely strange and weird happened at the banquet, which embarrassed the host of the banquet to the extreme. After the head of the Dodge family decisively agreed to cooperate with Badi, several older nobles could not stand and hurriedly stepped out of the crowd. Badi only realized at this time that little Luther had made several preparations that would not fail at the banquet he attended, which was that he needed the big boss behind the scenes. to show up and stay well, or tease a few women to warm the bed, or drink and quietly watch the changes in the wind and clouds, and appreciate the masterpiece he created, the drama of splitting the family. Badi also happily realized that this Earth has a 9th level intelligence, which can be said to be the smartest human being. Lex Luthor's arrangement. It's really worth watching, even though he's just a child. Badi smiled faintly and remembered the proud, chin raised, and complacent smile of little Luthor before he got on the car. He really looked like a child showing off his achievements to his parents. Badi's mouth curled up, and he was very satisfied with Luthor. Although he was not here, he had completed everything very well, very perfectly. He continuously dug up some old noble members in the family, which was of great benefit to his own power. The family members who helped him a lot united, and it looked like another family, but of course it was still different. With Badi as the leader, they respected his name and listened to his words. There was absolutely no discussion, parliament, or anything like that. Mr. Badi, there is only 20% left in the end, the elderly in the family. Is there any way? The head of the Lando family, over 50 years old, with a sturdy figure, wearing round glasses, gave him a somewhat elegant temperament. He was the 4th one to come out. He was originally in a wait-and-see state. Finally, when he saw the benefits of the heads of the Dodge and Calvin families being reduced, he could no longer stay, and hurried out to make amends to see if there was any way to recover more benefits. The most important thing was the life of the father of the family. As for money, investing in Badi was still simple for these old nobles. They hoped that Badi would immediately build Universe Co. Limited, occupy a quota, and start experiments immediately. The sooner the better. Therefore, the heads of several families looked at Badi with hopeful eyes. The initiative was completely in Badi's hands, and there was no discussion at all. Badi did not cooperate with them, but cooperated with others casually, and there were also many people willing to cooperate. Although the family of the metropolis was a top-level wealthy family, it was not the only one. There were still other large groups that did not care about the family. Therefore, their passivity was also justified. They also understood that, so the Dodge and Calvin families would cooperate with Badi, even if their benefits were reduced by more than half. But obviously, Badi was not happy with their noble style. They had never seen such a cooperation that could reduce profits. They were secretly bitter and bitter in their hearts. This is fate. The people who had been watching were scratching their heads. What kind of cooperation was this? If all of you old nobles stamped your feet, the metropolis would shake. But now, you are so polite, humble, and even a little bit humble, and you insist on cooperating with Badi? Everyone felt a little incredible in their hearts, staring at them strangely, and couldn't guess anything. It was just that in the future, when Badi's Universe Co. Limited ruled the entire metropolis and even the world, everyone at the scene would know why these nobles were willing to cooperate with Badi, even though they had cut most of their profits. Because they saw the future. From today on, the Dodge family will withdraw from the family alliance. Suddenly, the head of the Dodge family acted vigorously and resolutely announced that he would stand on the same boat with Badi, completely severing ties with the family alliance and standing on his side. The banquet hall was shaken like an earthquake. Someone has voluntarily withdrawn from the family. Although there are people coming in and out of the family, they are just forced to withdraw because of the decline of assets. No one has ever voluntarily given up, withdrawn from the family, and withdrawn from the alliance. This voluntary withdrawal can be said to be a thunderbolt on the ground, which is completely out of control. Everyone was in an uproar and talked about it. The most talked about thing is what Badi has mastered that can actually dig the Dodge family to withdraw from the family alliance. This is a major event. No matter how deep Adder Edge's mansion is, he can't help but be moved. This is the first time that a noble has withdrawn from the family alliance. This is a world-shaking event, and it also proves the incompetence of himself as the person in charge. Unprecedented. This is the first time that someone has voluntarily withdrawn from the family in more than 200 years since the family was established. His dark face is extremely ugly, and his eyes are staring at Badi with cold light flashing. However, the earthquake does not seem to stop so easily. After the head of the Dodge family announced his withdrawal, the head of the Calvin family, a stern, serious, and unsmiling noble old man also announced his withdrawal, which then caused a reaction of involvement. The heads of the noble families gathered around Badi announced one after another. The Colvin family withdrew from the family alliance. The Landor family withdrew from the family alliance. The Lawrence family withdrew from the family alliance. Several old nobles announced that they would stand on the same front with Badi and abandon the family, a wealthy family that had been deeply rooted in the metropolis for more than 200 years. The family was completely split. Even the head of the Landor family, a refined middle-aged man with glasses, pulled out a member of the family and pulled him to Badi's side, and another one announced his withdrawal from the family. The Lawrence family did not want to lose, so they pulled 2 family members to Badi's side and quickly announced their withdrawal. In an instant, the family was split. 7 of the original 17 families directly joined Badi. Everyone at the banquet was stunned. The environment changed too quickly, and people were at a loss. What happened to the family that had always been an upper-class family in the past? It was like an earthquake that tore the family apart. If it was an earthquake, it would be better to say that Badi stomped his feet, and then the whole family was torn apart. It took a long time for everyone to come back to their senses, and then they exclaimed and looked at Badi in disbelief. Badi was still calm and composed, and his expression had not changed since he came in. All of this happened around this man, who was well dressed in a white suit, had a tall and gentle figure, and his composure had never changed. Chapter 110. The banquet ends. The banquet was immediately divided. Those who were beside Badi would be his subordinates in the future. Although they were cooperating with him in a lower class attitude, no one could predict the human heart. What they wanted might be even greater, but it was not so easy to get it from Badi. You are very skilled in understanding the human heart. Badi smiled and sighed at them. They were undoubtedly very skilled. They knew what they needed to do at this moment. They got on Badi's boat completely without hesitation, and even pulled in 3 other families who were weaker than them and had always been on their side. Badi would not mind them understanding his thoughts. On the contrary, he wanted his subordinates to understand his thoughts, what they could do, and what they could not do. It was better to be smart and not overstep. In essence, he was not a cruel person. But since the suicide slumps, he had the reputation of a tyrant. The underworld forces of the entire metropolis actually called him a tyrant. Just because the people below violated his taboos, he ordered them to be killed without hesitation. They believed in others, were fanatical and crazy, and thought he was the bright guiding light in the turbid world. They were afraid of others, trembling in fear, and were also ruthless and indifferent, selfish, and violent kings, ruling the earth. Of course, he didn't need to explain all this. He just continued to do his own things, plans, and rule. For them to leave the family and board his ship, it means that they will become his subordinates. They may think it will be a low-level cooperation, but for Badi, they are subordinates. This kind of thing that is delivered to his door and beneficial to him, Badi will not be stingy to give them what they want. The benefits will be increased by 20%, and the head of the Dodge family, the leader, will be 30%. This made them feel satisfied, and they smiled a lot. The head of the Dodge family smiled extra brightly and deliberately raised his eyebrows at the head of the Colvin family. Now they also have 70% of the benefits. This is lifespan, which is on par with the old rival, the head of the Colvin family. He deliberately mocked the head of the Colvin family secretly and glared at this nobleman with a solemn face and a polite demeanor. The head of the Dodge family did not agree. He knew that under the appearance of the Colvin family pretending to be a noble and polite, he must be secretly itching to get ahead, and he lost the opportunity. This made the head of the Dodge family happy. Seeing that the old rival was unhappy was his greatest happiness. They have fought for a lifetime, and they know each other well. In the end, no one is convinced. The rest is to see who lives longer, who dies first, or whose family falls first. Badi is very insightful, watching their slight movements and their dissatisfaction with each other. This feeling is like being an emperor, with balanced human rights under his command, which makes him feel at ease. This feeling of sitting on the throne and letting others guess and flatter his thoughts is great. Whether they are pretending or just like this by nature, Badi is satisfied. Satisfaction is enough. Badi smiled. The banquet was clearly divided. Badi's side had formed a new team headed by Badi. Many people who came to the banquet, led by their families, subconsciously came over and separated from their families. During the banquet, the crowd was already divided into 3 groups. One group of 7 families, led by Badi. One group of old families, the family alliance, where Adarechi was still in charge. The other group was not involved in the matter, and they were just here to attend the banquet. Of course, their status would not be low, such as the one who dared to speak boldly. The woman in the purple evening dress had a light in her eyes. She looked at Badi. She did not expect that Badi could easily split the family and win over 7 families to his side. This ability was a bit scary and excellent, which aroused her interest. In the sound of the small conversation, each team recognized their own identity. The banquet hall was soft and bright. At a certain moment, the small discussions gradually stopped. The hall was suddenly so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Everyone stood in tacit understanding and adjusted their positions. The hall was separated by an empty horizontal road in the middle, like the Chu River and Han River in a chess game. There were angry eyes and hostility that could not be suppressed. They glared from the boundary road, as if shouting, "Why betray the family?" Adarechi's dark face was extremely ugly, his eyelids were tight, and he stared at Badi with a frightening coldness. He asked why they betrayed the family and what bargaining chips Badi gave them, but each family head was unwilling to say it, because if they did, the news would be spread, and they would definitely not have a share. They knew that this matter would involve too much, so much that the US government would spare no effort to charge them with various crimes and replace them. This could not be said. Only the head of the Calvin family reminded him faintly. Adarechi, I have been in charge of the Calvin family for 50 years, and it has become more and more prosperous. Why? It's because I follow the general trend and naturally follow the river into the vast ocean. Sometimes, if you regard yourself as the sea, you can't taste whether the water is salty or fresh. The words of the head of the Calvin family seemed to be more sarcastic, but it was also a warning to him, telling him not to fight against the general trend, otherwise he would be crushed by the wheels and unable to turn over. How could Adarechi believe it? He thought that these old nobles were too proud. Today, he saw clearly that these so-called nobles were acting like this. His face was angry and cold. Badi crossed the empty crosswalk under the gaze of everyone. He was tall and straight, with a majestic momentum. He moved like a mountain, and came to Adarechi. Adarechi seemed to have a mental illusion. He saw Badi looking down at him on the top of the mountain, and above the white clouds. He knew that it was an illusion, but it was hard not to imagine it that way. Because in front of Badi, Badi was like a ferocious beast. He was born at a different level of life. Even breathing air seemed to be able to spit out forcefully at will, which was enough to turn into a sharp arrow to kill people. The pressure was particularly great. Badi ignored Adarechi and apologized to his wife. Because if he knew that this mature and classical woman had a husband, he would not choose to spend a night with a married woman unless he had no choice. Because this is an insult to marriage, an insult to other people's marriages, and also an insult to his own marriage. This is the sadness of his previous life, and he is unwilling to repeat the same mistakes. Adarechi's wife was stunned for a moment, and expressed very well that it was okay. Obviously, from her words and even her actions, she was a noble lady who was raised in a noble family with excellent cultivation. She was a real noble lady, impeccable. After such an apology, Badi turned his eyes to Adarechi. When Adarechi saw Badi's behavior, he had already glared at Badi in anger, wishing to tear him apart directly. He had worked his way up from the poor. Although he was shrewd, he lacked a lot of cultivation. He was already angry, and his wife's arm was shaking with anger. He felt that Badi was talking to his wife, and he was not giving him face, and he was not giving him face again. He didn't need to endure the anger. If he endured it, he would be a turtle egg. It was already a clear confrontation, so there was no need to express hypocritical goodwill. Bamulodi. He growled deeply in his throat, his eyes cold and fierce. Do you think I'm arrogant, rude, conceited, and ungrateful? Why should I give you face and join the family? Be your dog. Badi looked down at him, half a head taller than Adarechi, with emotionless eyes, looking down at him like an ant. In Badi's eyes, he was just an ant, and he could kill him with a glance. From the moment he knew that he sent assassins to his side to kill him and understood his character, Badi had no intention of regaining his favor. In Badi's heart, he was a ladder and a stepping stone for little Luther to experience the spring mud that allowed little Luther to grow up as soon as possible. Adareg's eyebrows jumped and veins appeared faintly on his dark face. He said angrily, "Do you think that you can rise safely in Metropolis by splitting the family? Wishful thinking. The split of the family is undoubtedly a great loss of vitality, but the remaining family members are still a powerful force that cannot be underestimated in Metropolis. If he wants to gain a firm foothold in business, he will not sit idly by." Under the comprehensive sniping, he believes that Badi will find it difficult to gain a foothold in Metropolis and can only rely on a few old nobles to hold on. In the future, the Galaxy Group and the Universe Group will start a business war. Okay, your enemy is Slack Luther. Use all commercial means to attack him. Badi smiled at the corner of his mouth and said lightly, "Also, I won't bother you about the killer." Badi smiled at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were murderous and intimidating, staring at Adareg for a moment. When he met Badi's eyes, a feeling actually emerged from his brain. His eyes could kill people, as if they pierced his heart, causing a chill of fear in his heart. His breathing suddenly choked, his neck was stiff, his hands and feet felt cold, and the cold spread to his upper body, making him unable to move. Try hard to defeat Lex Luthor. Today's good show was also designed by him. Come on. Badi smiled lightly, patted Adareg's stiff shoulders in a friendly manner, and turned around to leave him at all, inviolable back. Although he said that he would not care about Adareg's assassins, for the sake of safety, he would always ask Hera to monitor him, so that he really had no threat, and could become a stepping stone on Luthor's road of experience. When he recovered from the fear, sweat suddenly appeared on his face, his hands and feet were sore, and his breathing became heavier. Just now, he felt that he was carrying a heavy pressure on his body and mind, which made him feel terrified and panicked. His pupils shrank into dots, and his mind was horrified. He didn't understand what was going on with him at all. His body was a little weak, and his breathing gradually became stable. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Badi gloomily. In the eyes of everyone, this was obviously a cowardly appearance. People secretly felt that the family seemed to be messed up by Badi, and there was no upper-class aristocratic face. After returning to his team, Badi invited several partners who he liked and were suitable to spend a night with him. This time, he asked if they were married, etc., so as not to feel guilty. Several singles or beautiful socialites agreed happily. The bold and avant-garde woman in the purple evening dress also came forward and took the initiative to invite him to spend a night. But Badi refused. There is no doubt that this bold and avant-garde woman in the purple evening dress is very charming, sexy and bold, and is a rare beauty for men. But she actually asked Badi to spend only one night with her. 2 people. Badi decisively refused. He had already invited several mature and beautiful ladies. How could he give up? Not to mention, one night, one person. You are looking for death. One night. You will die in one night. Badi shook his head and refused very straightforwardly, which made the second generation on the side stunned. Later, Badi was regarded as a person who only liked mature women with charm. When Badi invited women to spend the night with him, a small incident happened. The head of a family brought the useless descendant, a second generation wearing a purple suit, with a big back hair and a frivolous face, but now with a fierce face, to apologize to Badi. Because it was this guy who took the lead in mocking and using words to hurt Badi, the head of the family immediately said that he would expel him from the family, saying that he would break his legs and let him sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. This is undoubtedly a bit exaggerated, but it also shows the determination of the family. Finally, Badi nodded. Then let's deal with it this way. The head of the family and the second generation were stunned. Really? Break the legs? The second generation was scared. Is it so cruel? I just said a few words. Later, Badi also said with a smile, it was a joke, which frightened them into a cold sweat. They forced a smile on their faces and felt very nervous because Badi did not look like he was joking. It seemed that breaking a leg was a very easy thing, which really made people feel a little uneasy. The last thing was really beyond Badi's expectations. The second generation with a big back hair and gel hair sent his father away and whispered to Badi that he did this completely because of Luther's arrangement. Luther just wanted to add a little more confidence so that those old nobles could make a decision as soon as possible, and also calculated the temperament and psychology of Ada Edge so that everything would develop in the expected pace. The second generation was not stupid. He vaguely guessed Luther's intention, but he was not sure. In the end, he chose to tell Badi and rely on Badi because Badi was the big boss behind the scenes. Luther promised him that he could get more from Badi. Badi really didn't expect this. Luther thought more than he thought, and now he started testing himself. As a human being, you should not despise the god who will die if you despise him. If you are a human being, how will you deal with such ridicule? If you are a god, despising a high and mighty god will only result in death. This is related to the future. What kind of mentality will Luther have when facing his various decisions? This kind of secret test cannot be said to be good or bad, but it can be known that Luther is trying to figure himself out and testing his bottom line, morality, and character bit by bit. What a smart boy. Badi smiled, and then he told the second generation with a big back hair to pretend that he had never told him such a thing. When Badi was about to leave the banquet with several mature and beautiful women, the news that Badi had been waiting for a long time came back from Kansas. The driver handed him the phone. Mike's voice rang on the phone. "Boss, we found kryptonite." Chapter 111 Planning. Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited. The 15th floor. This floor is designed with all focusing glass. The entire ceiling is transparent, like a funnel. The layers of light collecting glass are progressive and translucent. At night, lying on the bed, you can enjoy the beauty of the starry sky. After the layers of glass are refracted, there are several different ways of slanting, just like crystal, which refracts the beautiful and charming starry sky. Looking at it makes people feel quiet, stretch their waists comfortably, and relax their body and mind lazily. In the morning, the sun jumped out of the clouds and refracted the golden light. The calm glass ceiling, like a breathing fish scale, automatically unfolded and tilted. The golden light of the sun was refracted and focused, and reflected on the white jade sculpture of Badi. The skin greedily absorbed the energy of the sun, with a faint halo, and the outline of his entire white jade sculpture began to warm up. The first ray of sunlight, after waking up, made him feel comfortable. Badi slowly opened his eyes, with a clear gaze after a night's sleep, and a relaxed and extremely comfortable demeanor. He raised his hands high, stretching his waist muscles. His lumbar spine was stretched so hard that it made a creaking sound. All the cells were breathing and eating. It was extremely comfortable. He smiled and looked at the sun. It was a sunny day. He slightly pushed aside the various beauties lying on the bed. They were breathing tiredly, long and weak. One of them even opened her mouth and snored. It was extremely unmannerly. Of course, in this situation, they could not maintain their manners. Badi's battle all night had exhausted them. Their bodies were twitching constantly. Now they couldn't even get up in the morning. It was estimated that they would need to wait until the afternoon to act. Badi got out of bed and went straight to the bathroom to wash. The automatic glass ceiling above his head slanted the sunlight, which moved and refracted as he walked. The temperature gradually rose. The reflection on Badi's body alone was 90 degrees high, so he couldn't lie on the bed anymore. The bathroom was steamed up by the high temperature of the sun, and a large amount of mist rose up. In the hazy air, a very beautiful torso was being washed. The hazy sculptured body was slow and dynamic. After washing, Badi casually waved his hand backwards, and the automatic focusing glass above his head began to move. It was no longer facing Badi, but refracting the sunlight to the other end to store solar energy. The room immediately became a little dark and grey, and it was quiet. When he controlled the body temperature to return to normal, a body made by Hera pushed the door in. It was a simple biological service body. The genes were not complicated. Hera made several of them, each with its own unique appearance. They were just made to serve Badi with trivial things. This one was named Gentle Hera, and was controlled by Gentle Hera to dress him. They are awake. Send them out. Badi opened his hands, and Gentle Hera put on his shirt, buttoned it in front of him, and pulled the collar, feeling quite like a virtuous woman. Then, gentle Hera answered and reported some of his ongoing engineering plans. The two of them were a bit like a wife serving her husband, chatting about all sorts of household matters. The genetic testing of Bruno and Tobias is complete. There are 375 ways to strengthen them, including insects, mammals, plants, ancient Kryptonian genes, alien race genes, element of fire, water, earth, and mines, and a series of other atmospheric methods. According to calculations, the method of the constant solar furnace will take until around 2024 to have enough body strength to fit into a small solar power furnace. It can be converted into a solar energy reactor. As long as the reactor is eaten and stuffed in the stomach, it is theoretically enough to supply energy for a long time. The preliminary blueprint for the Metropolis Signal Tower, the giant energy reactor in the underground base, and the future planning of the Metropolis has been completed. All funds will be gathered in a week, and it is expected that the transformation of the Metropolis can be completed within 5 years. Using the sunlight, I made some extra solar energy capsules. One can replenish the current body energy limit, and can also be used as a missile for fun. Gentle Hera said the horrible words very gently. This organism had gentle features and a virtuous woman's temperament, as if she was thinking about him like Badi's wife. Mike is coming back. According to calculations, he will arrive in about 2 hours and 32 minutes, if he doesn't encounter terrorists hijacking planes, being hit by cars, robbing, raping, or kidnapping on the way. Badi's eyebrows and eyes were a little strange. What kind of emotions did Hera put on this organism? After getting dressed, as always, in white tones, with a clean, slender, neat and majestic body, and a white windbreaker, Badi began to walk throughout the entire Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited. After the success of the heart disease specific drug and diabetes drug, sildenafil, and a series of skincare products, Badi also applied for a series of Nobel Prizes in medicine, such as discovering the genetic regulation mechanism of organ development and programmed cell death, discovering the organization of olfactory receptors and olfactory systems, discovering Helicobacter pylori and its role in gastritis and gastric ulcers, discovering RNA interference silencing phenomenon caused by double-stranded RNA, accelerating the healing of wounds by body drug cells, etc. It is expected that in the next 5 years, the Nobel Prize will be directly awarded from Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited, to build momentum for him. Also because of this kind of hype, other researchers realized the potential of the Cosmic Biotechnology Research Company, and found several famous and capable research experts, and began to study various human biological reactions. Of course, Badi did not need such simple research results from them, but only needed to be able to assist Hera in a series of research in a critical moment. If possible, Badi did not mind them giving him a little surprise. After all, this is a world full of weirdness, surprises, and scientific changes. And when Badi passed through each laboratory department, and took a little look to see if there was any value, he would always face a fiery worshipful look. Hera was spreading information guidance throughout the entire laboratory building all the time, subconsciously guiding them to worship Badi, believe in Badi, and be loyal to Badi, which was almost brainwashing control. Otherwise, when the special medicine was taken out, they would have run away long ago, and took the drug information to join other biological companies, so Badi controlled these people. But this method can no longer be used. Long-term use will lead to a single mechanism of thinking, which is difficult to change flexibly. Strictly speaking, the first batch of employees of Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited have no use except worshipping Badi and being loyal to Badi. Especially for research, there is no inspiration. They can only help and do auxiliary things forever, and it is difficult to grow. In short, Badi completely killed their potential. Their potential is left to listen to Badi. After going down to the negative second floor, Badi selected 2 most suitable strengthening directions for Bruno and Tobias. Tobias is huge and has superhuman strength. He has albinism. Badi treated his albinism and strengthened his 5 senses. His body will be strengthened, and he has the power to transform into a giant. According to calculations, he can transform at least 5 meters, and his strength increases with the transformation. As for Bruno, Badi chose a steel strengthening option for him, and he will transform into a steel man. Both of them are the type of human shields. They have enough intelligence to rule a city. Badi has provided them with a layer of insurance, with enough defense to withstand the attack of bullets, which will allow them to establish power in Star City and Seaside City according to his plan. After doing all this, Badi stood on the second floor, waiting for Mike to come. When the sun was shining on his body, he suddenly felt weak in his fingertips, and weakness surged from his fingertips. Mike, with kryptonite, came back. Chapter 112 People. Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. Second floor. The sun shines in from the open glass window in the white, clean and fresh corridor. The sun shines on the tiny dust and floating particles in the air. The environment is quiet, and the sun is also quiet and warm. Badi stands, looking up at the sun, silent. He rarely looks up at anything, but he must look up at the sun and long for the sun. The sun gives him power, eyesight, penetrating vision, high temperature rays, microscopic vision, ears hearing all directions, unrivaled power, power to break the earth. Sunlight is his life and source of power. It is almost 10 o'clock now. The sun is warm yellow, very beautiful, reflecting warmth. In his eyes, the sun has reflected more magnificent colors than the rainbow, and there are even some that the human eye cannot perceive. The human eye can only perceive a very narrow range of light from red to purple, about 780 to 380 nanometers, called the visible spectrum, but there are still very high and very low spectrums that cannot be seen. Badi sees all of these one by one, seeing more and feeling more than the average naked eye. The sunlight in his eyes was folded into light, as if it turned into points and lines, vibrating and transmitting, and being received by himself. His white figure was bathed in the sunlight, emitting a divine light. However, suddenly, it seemed to have fallen from the altar. The sunlight stagnated for a moment, stagnating beside him for a while, and did not enter his body again. He felt that every cell in his body seemed to have withered, too lazy to move, so lazy that it was like the weak groaning of a person with a high fever, and suddenly it went from active and greedy jumping to dead silence in an instant, unwilling to absorb a trace of sunlight. His right finger trembled, and his expression of silently looking up at the sun changed. The fingertips of his right hand suddenly transmitted a feeling of weakness, and the feeling of weakness climbed up his arm. It was like a spasm, uncontrollable, and like paralyzed tendons, numb, and then soft, and his body bones could not lift up. The nerve transmission system was delayed, and his five senses gradually shrank. His ears could not hear people talking thousands of meters away, and his eyes could not penetrate obstacles, could not see thousands of miles away, and could not emit thermal vision. The body is going to decay. 15 meters away, Mike ran out of the elevator, still a sturdy man, a tall and strong Russian man with big serious eyes and a rough face. His silence scared children to tears. He held a black suitcase in his hand. Turning the corner, he saw Badi basking in the sun with an expressionless face. The white figure was still tall, but the momentum was different from before, and there was a trace of ordinariness. When he saw Badi, he suddenly had an illusion that he felt different from the previous Badi. They were basking in the sun together, but for some reason, there was always a feeling that Badi was a human, not a god. He put his doubts in his heart and strode towards Badi. In the white and clean corridor, the brilliant reflection of the sun brought people a warm feeling. The footsteps stepped on the ground step by step, approaching Badi. As Mike approached, Badi became more and more ordinary. But his lumbar spine was still straight, his face was still expressionless, and he still stood there. His body gradually degenerated, his eyes narrowed, his ears narrowed, as if rewinding back to the time when he was weak. It was as if the cells were using the solar energy they had absorbed, and an acidic green substance was produced in their genes, corrupting his muscle cells and platelets. The blood that used to flow like rivers was now slowly flowing like mud. His heart was no longer beating as vigorously as before, and his bones were corroded by the acidic green substance and were fragile. Mike came to a distance of 2 meters, and Badi had completely changed into an ordinary person, weaker than ever before. But he was still basking in the sun, his face unchanged, looking up at the sun. "I will crush you sooner or later." Badi said something to the sun, like mumbling to himself, but also like an infinite ambition, with a grand and unparalleled ambition, to walk the path ahead and control the stars. Mike suddenly had goosebumps all over his body, and a kind of heat was born in his heart, a restless flame in his heart, and the burning blood was about to rise. As he got closer to Badi, he felt more and more that Badi was just an ordinary person basking in the sun. This puzzled him. Where did the divine light he had in the past go? Where is the domineering god and king who exudes infinite brilliance, looks down on the world, and controls the world? He is the one who submits to the god. Why does the closer he gets to him, the more he feels that Badi is just like an ordinary person? He was puzzled. But Badi said to the sun, I will crush you sooner or later. Suddenly, his blood rushed. It was still the same voice, the same momentum. This king and god who looked down on the world had not changed. Without the brilliance, he was still so imposing that people were crazy and believed in him like crazy. His words, his expression, every word made people believe in him madly. He is a god. Mike suddenly felt like kneeling beside him. This kind of impressive aura made him too excited. Even Mike didn't know why. When Badi said he wanted to crush the sun, he felt that Badi would definitely be able to do it in the future. And he was just waiting to see the sun go out. Witness the existence of that moment. His eyes were wide open, almost tearing up, with a hint of fanaticism. He was breathing heavily and standing beside Badi. Badi didn't speak, so he just stood there quietly. 1 meter. His body dropped to the level of an ordinary person, almost suffocating, and his body was gradually corrupted by the acidic green substances produced. According to this level, in about half an hour, obvious green tendons will appear on the surface of the body. He is so weak without touching kryptonite. Badi's face was expressionless. He turned his eyes back from the sun. At this moment, his eyes were actually stung by looking directly at the sun, like ordinary people, stung so that his tear glands were sore. At this moment, the sun was no longer his source of strength, which made him feel very uncomfortable. This made people feel betrayed. He should have always protected the one who gave him strength. Why did he suddenly abandon himself in the presence of kryptonite? And why didn't the light shine on him? If you can always be my source of strength, I will protect you, even if I shed all my blood and dry up my body. Because of the influence of kryptonite, even his spirit was affected. It was not weakness, but a complex thing emerged from his memory and thoughts. It made people scared and crazy. It made him think of very bad things. It made him want to crush the sun. In the future, if one day he reigns over the universe, he must swallow the sun in one gulp to see what it tastes like, and he must also squeeze this sun like a marble. Because of this sun, it made his eyes sting and made him have crazy ideas. His genes were problematic, and now that he was in close contact with kryptonite, the problem seemed to be even bigger. Badi felt that he seemed to be screaming from the bottom of his heart, madly, to vent his inner dissatisfaction. His face was expressionless now, and he had suppressed it deeply. He controlled his mental state, and his willpower was strong, controlling this abnormal mental state. Tell me about the situation. Badi spoke. His voice was not weak. His indifferent expression did not change at all, and there was no change in his mind and body. Mike handed over a photo. In the photo, the background is a cornfield, with green corn stalks standing upright. The wind blows the corn stalks sideways, and the long leaves float up. The sky is blue with a few white clouds. The Ken couple, whom Badi had met, were smiling brightly in the sun, very happy. The woman was holding a baby in her arms. The baby in the swaddling clothes had a pair of blue eyes and looked at the camera with curiosity. At their feet, a white wolf-like dog seemed to be smiling at the baby in the woman's arms. It was a husky-like grin, which looked very funny. There seemed to be thoughts in the eyes, and it was smiling with satisfaction. Badi looked at the photo intently. His eyes turned away from Superman and stayed on a dog. It happened more than a week ago. It seemed that a meteor fell from the sky, but there was no sign of falling. We disguised ourselves as reporters to visit. The Ken couple happened to take in an abandoned baby and a dog a week ago. Chapter 113. I will destroy you in one move. Badi took the photo, very gently, but without shaking. If Mike hadn't held down one side of the photo and released his fingers, Badi wouldn't have been able to pull it over. Now he was so weak that Mike could hit him. A large amount of green matter was generated in his genes, decaying his body. The sun shone on him, which was a bit ironic, no longer giving him strength. He stared at the photo intently, staring at a dog with white and soft hair, like a wolf. This was the dog raised by Al's family. When he was on Krypton, he and Hale had been to Al's family and seen it. It was exactly the same, but different, because at that time, it was really a dog, not so smart. Now this dog followed to Earth. There is no doubt that it was to protect Kal-El. Have you ever come into contact with this dog? Badi asked. Mike was stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting why the focus would be on a dog. He thought about it for a while. Very fierce. When we were about to approach the baby, the dog almost bit our people. It stayed by the child and didn't allow anyone except the Kents to get close. Mike said. He thought and hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's said in that town that someone saw a white dog flying. I don't know if it's true or not, and if there's any connection." Mike had no way of knowing why the boss was so interested in something strange, so he could only tell him what he had heard and what he had seen. The sunlight shone in through the window, already very hot, and the floating dust was slowly swimming. The atmosphere became quiet and silent. Can it fly? Badi's heart sank. It's only been about a week since he came to Earth, and he can fly? This gene level is at least the advanced gene of General Zod. Considering that Jor-El has always been prepared for a rainy day, Badi can imagine that it would not be strange for this dog to have a level beyond the advanced gene. In other words, this dog is now stronger than Badi. This dog, with the awakened Kryptonian gene, has fully opened up all kinds of abilities as soon as it arrived. Jor-El has transformed this dog. Badi looked at the dog in the photo, pondered for a while, and said, "Where did you find the kryptonite? Does anyone know?" 16 kilometers outside the town. No one knows except us. We followed your instructions. We didn't discuss the kryptonite, and no one knows our purpose. Mike bowed slightly and said. Badi nodded, but his mind was full of thoughts. The sun shone on his thinker's face, outlining his resolute face, and his eyes flashing with deep thoughts. Kryptonite can undoubtedly restrain Kryptonian genes. He also wanted to take the kryptonite and kill the dog immediately, and then snatch the life code of Kal-El's body back to complete his own genes. But, is Jor-El that simple? Is it so simple to arrange a dog to protect his son? At this moment, Badi recalled everything they had fought on Krypton. The entire Kryptonian society was turned upside down by the two of them. Several parliaments were used to the extreme by them. In the end, the entire Kryptonian was against Badi. Under the general trend, Badi lost a trick and got on the spaceship bomb prepared by Jor-El for him. He had no way of knowing whether Jor-El still knew that he was not dead. If he knew, he rushed over with kryptonite like this. It was very likely just a trap. Especially with Jor-El's IQ, Badi didn't believe that he would not be prepared and just send a dog. The biggest question was, did Jor-El know that kryptonite was the nemesis of Kryptonians? Badi thought about it and felt that he knew. Because the biological gene calculation on Krypton can even use the gene matching degree to calculate a person's future, create a person's future, and use genes to determine a person's future. For knowing that kryptonite is the nemesis of Kryptonians, this kind of thing is simply a piece of cake. There is no reason not to know. And the existence of kryptonite should be that when Superman's spaceship was traveling through space, it attracted the fragments of the destroyed planet. These materials were radioactive in the explosion and arrived on the Earth with the spaceship. These radioactive fragments are green kryptonite. Kryptonite does not react with oxygen, so it will not burn when passing through the Earth's atmosphere. In this way, kryptonite will appear on the Earth. It is even possible that the dog deliberately placed the kryptonite. If you think about it this way, kryptonite is actually more of a trigger to attract Badi to deal with the dog and Jor-El. Maybe, in fact, there is kryptonite on the dog to deal with himself, or even kryptonite to control himself. Thinking about it this way, Badi felt it was natural. He was familiar with Jor-El. This opponent, your enemy, definitely knows you better than your lover. Jor-El will never feel at ease without a few backups. Badi knows him too well, and he also knows Badi. If I'm not mistaken, Jor-El is not completely dead. But Jor-El definitely doesn't know. Kryptonite and red sunlight are very effective against Kryptonians, but there is another thing he must not know, which is also very effective. Magic. He needs to find magic. Badi will not believe in anything related to Jor-El. Only magic, which Jor-El is not familiar with, can completely destroy him and obtain the code of life. Jor-El, I will destroy you in one blow. Badi suddenly looked up at the sun, his eyes were fierce, and he said, Mike, gather Leon and others, and wait for me on the 13th floor in one day. Also, go to the first floor, to draw a tube of your blood. Mike's breathing suddenly tightened, his eyes widened, and excitement surged in his heart. The thumping of his heart echoed fiercely in his ears. Badi's implication was that he would give him superhuman abilities. After following for this period of time, he actually expected that he would gain superhuman powers sooner or later, because his mentality was completely different, and he already wanted to follow Badi to the end. He believed that Badi could see it. Now the surprise was in front of him, making him excited and unable to calm down for a while. He suppressed his excitement and said, I know, boss. Badi nodded, turned around, took Mike's black briefcase, and walked straight to the elevator for the exclusive underground floor. When he entered the elevator and the elevator door slowly closed, the hand holding the briefcase had a green substance that spread to the back of his hand, reflecting the blue veins, which was hideous and terrifying. Smallville, Kansas. Under the eaves of the wooden house on the farm, the sun shone in obliquely. The cool breeze blew, itching on the skin, and making people feel comfortable. A white wolf-like dog, strangely, twisted its tight cervical vertebrae like a human, bared its big mouth, showing its fangs. Its eyes flashed red, and looked up at the sun. Bamulodi, where are you? Chapter 114 Effect. Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. Laboratory building. -2nd floor. The light is not very bright, with a faint dim light, and you can clearly see the environment of this laboratory, which has a somewhat dark and strange atmosphere. The neatly arranged glass-sealed jars are filled with green liquid, and bubbles float up from the bottom from time to time. The cold air molecules of the air conditioner are wandering in the space, and the hazy cold air on the ground is wandering, floating, and drifting. In one of the glass-sealed jars, there is a 1 meter tall body floating inside, with a scar on his cheek, which brings a bit of coldness and cruelty to his resolute face. It's Badi. This is Badi's clone, in the larval stage. In a testing room, Badi is lying on the operating table, with sensor patches and induction magnetic needles attached to various parts of his body. There is a mechanical arm holding a green kryptonite, the size of a fist, clamped firmly on his chest. The scanning electronic light keeps crossing the surface of his body, and the green kryptonite substance spreads on the surface of his body, reflecting the hideous blue veins in his body. Green kryptonite, like little snakes, swam through his blood vessels, creating a green mist. His skin had lost its vitality, his fibers were as weak as threads and easily torn apart. The blood in his bone marrow was growing so slowly that it was about to stop, and the cells in his blood were wailing. The radioactive reaction caused the green substance in his body to continue to be produced, and in an instant he was like an old tree withering away. Badi felt that his body was old and decayed, his bones turned into crisp biscuits, breaking at the slightest fold, and an indescribable feeling surged into his heart, which was even more powerless than that of an ordinary person with a high fever. He didn't even want to groan. His heart was so weak that it couldn't beat, and he just wanted to wait for death in exhaustion, and he closed his eyes in sorrow and tiredness. He was like an old man who had entered his twilight years, his last moments. His eyes were dull, his hands and feet were limp, and he was about to die. Badi moaned weakly, having exhausted all his strength, and blue veins like dragons appeared on his face. He was taking his last breath, and was about to die. At this time, the mechanical arm suddenly took away the kryptonite. As the mechanical arms passed on continuously, the kryptonite was instantly taken away from Badi 15 meters away, and placed in a black open suitcase. Suddenly, the veins on Badi's dry body became blue, and the green mist of kryptonite on his face became lighter and lighter. The blue veins slowly calmed down until the green mist of kryptonite disappeared. The blood in his body surged like a big river, surging and washing his body. As the cells rotated, they produced the energy that Kryptonians absorb from the sun. It was amazing. The green substance that had been produced by the radioactivity of kryptonite had contaminated his body. After the kryptonite left his body, the radioactivity gradually weakened, and the body was recovering solar energy. The green substance was gradually converted into solar energy that the body could absorb. Badi's face regained its color, and his hands, feet, and body muscles gradually swelled up again, recovering to a strong and powerful physical fitness. This process recovered faster and faster as the radioactivity of kryptonite continued to disappear. Badi suddenly jumped up from the operating table, taking a deep breath through his nose. His eyes were fierce and contracted, and his face was staring at the kryptonite with an unprecedented sternness. This reaction of being weak to the point of being unable to resist, and extremely weak, only took a few tenths of a second for the kryptonite to touch his skin. The radioactive reaction reacted with the energy in his body, making him extremely weak. He even had mental madness and hallucinations due to Badi's genetic defect, but Badi was able to suppress it, and did not show it. Kryptonite was more powerful than he had imagined, and its reaction to his body was completely destructive. And this was just ordinary green kryptonite, not to mention red, blue, black, white, silver, and gold, with various kryptonites of different effects. If Jor-El had other kryptonites of different colors, this would be a killer weapon that could kill him at will. This frightened Badi, and he faced Jor-El more cautiously. A capable Hera came forward. She was slim, and had a slender waist. She wore a white office suit, black crystal stockings, and high heels. She looked like a capable elite woman in the modern era. All the time, no matter which model of Hera she was wearing, she was showing the temptation of uniforms. She had been observing and recording Badi's physical reactions. Seeing Badi jumping up from the operating table, she walked forward and waved. A projection was projected on the wall, recording Badi's physical condition. Master, the ionizing radiation of kryptonite neutralizes the electrons in the cells in your body, preventing the original cell strengthening movement, and preventing the movement of electrons similar to that in solar cells. Hera said, and controlled the projection, to show the reaction inside the cells. If it only blocks the electronic reaction, it will at most prevent the host from absorbing solar energy. However, under the condition of kryptonite's radioactivity neutralization, the cells will rebel and produce kryptonite green substances, which will reduce the strength of the cells and corrupt the body's strength. As time goes by, it will completely kill the host. This is based on the weakness of the main gene of Krypton, which is difficult to eliminate. Hera said, and she took the clothes from the side and put them on Badi. Badi stared at the projection. He had studied biological genetics in depth on Krypton, so he naturally understood what Hera said. This is a defect that is difficult to eliminate. Even if the code of life is obtained, it will take a long time for the accumulated energy to become a qualitative change and become a more advanced species to change this genetic defect. In fact, the ancient Kryptonian scientists had already tried to carry out the qualitative change of the main gene of Kryptonians. The evolution was only halfway through, which was not perfect. Therefore, Doomsday was born. And only with the code of life can we truly become a theoretically perfect Kryptonian. The code of life is supposed to make Kryptonians more complete. Badi got off the operating table and put on his cape, knowing that there was no way to solve the threat of kryptonite for the time being. The best he could do was to make some equipment to block the radioactive radiation of kryptonite, such as radiation clothing. Finish the clone as soon as possible. I need to test whether the dog is Jor-El. Also, have you found the reconnaissance spacecraft that Jor-El launched from Krypton more than a decade ago? Chapter 115 Scattered. According to the records of Jor-El obtained on Krypton, it is calculated to be within the latitude circle of 62 degrees 14 north latitude in Greenland. The capable Hera answered. The professional beauty, who looked very fashionable in her professional suit, said worriedly at the end, "Master, it may not be safe there. He is the one in charge of this spaceship." "Yeah," Badi responded. In any case, he needed to send someone to find out. The main brain and materials on the spaceship that surpassed the Earth were of great help to him in building the metropolis as a base. His eyes were a little fierce and a little tired. He had been checking for a whole night, using kryptonite to check the reaction of his body continuously, and wandering between weakness and strength. The rise and fall between man and god, plus the hallucinations and stimulation of the mind, caused vomiting, heart rhythm, brain synapses being active, and depressed too quickly, and brain waves feeling stagnant, which made him feel uncomfortable. But now once he left the kryptonite, the green matter was transformed into the solar energy he absorbed, the electronic reaction in the cells became active again, and his body was full of strength. It was just that kind of psychological feeling. Mental health could not be eliminated, but was suppressed by his firm will. He would not feel at ease until he completely eliminated Jor-El and obtained the code of life. Badi left the underground laboratory. He passed by the glass-sealed jar where embryos were cultured and saw that his clone was gradually growing. It was already more than 1 meter tall and would soon grow to the same height as himself. Originally, this clone was needed to do something that was still dangerous for Badi even now. Now that Jor-El appeared, he just needed to use the clone to test a corner of Jor-El's deployment. Badi left the underground laboratory and went straight to the 13th floor. This was an office layout with a large conference room and office. When his building was not built yet, this was temporarily his office. From the 10th floor, it was basically all about the exchanges of office staff. From the 13th floor, entry was prohibited without Badi's order. The dark red carpet was soft and would leave a concave shape when stepped on. There were expensive sofas, a deep black conference table, and crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. This place is not luxurious, but solemn, with a calm atmosphere and a warm faith. 37 of Badi's men are waiting here. All of them are serious, with stern faces, standing without a smile, and appearing very well behaved. Badi likes his men to behave themselves, whether in front of him or following his rules. There are also many gangster-like men who are arrogant, frivolous, fearless, and say I'm the biggest in the world. I will fight the world with the boss and enjoy the glory and wealth in front of him, and then they are thrown to the sharks by him. This does not scare the rest of the people, but their faith gradually becomes stronger. It is precisely because of the rules and Badi's generous provision of the life and power they want that each of them abides by themselves in front of Badi and obeys his orders. Invisibly, the 37 men are actually divided into several different forces. Bruno, formerly of the International Gang. Tobias, formerly of the Organization 100. Leon, who followed Badi to conquer the world, and Andy, a Dihad who refused to reveal the location, even if Deathstroke cut off a finger, and their group of brothers are all Badi's Dihads. Finally, there is Mike who surrendered. In fact, there should be Luther's alcoholic father, but that guy is a spineless, incompetent, and arrogant. Badi put him in a suitable position as a small leader and ignored him. Badi did not plan to hold a meeting with them, but summoned them to the office one by one, and gave them instructions one by one. First, Bruno and Tobias. Bruno, I grant you a body that surpasses human power, a body as strong as steel. In 3 days, take your men, and follow my plan, to take root in Star City and lurk. Tobias, I grant you the power of a giant. In 3 days, take your men, and follow my plan, to take root in Seaside City and lurk. Bruno and Tobias' eyes radiated an inexplicable light, and they left the 13th floor with the plan documents given by Badi. Badi would ask people to hand over the forces in their metropolises and reorganize them. Then he announced his plans one by one. Burlingame, you will go to New York and create a computer company that will become the world's largest computer and network company. You will become a leading trade and transportation company in Los Angeles, California. Herman, you will become a Chicago financial tycoon and establish a bank. Myers, you will establish a weapons company in Nevada, and soon, you will cooperate with the military to provide weapons to the US military. Justin, you. Andre, you. Badi remembered the names of everyone in his head. The important tasks given to them made them more excited, and their eyes looked at Badi more fiery. There were nearly 30 cities that were arranged by Badi for some important industries that would shine in the future and companies that had a great connection. Not only companies, Badi also sent several people to countries that would still be in war in the future, joined a certain force, seized power, or established a new regime, and directly assessed the civil unrest in the future, and controlled a large number of countries. Everyone took the plan designed by Badi, walked out of the office, and acted according to the plan step by step. Before leaving, everyone received genetic modification and adjustment. Similarly, some subconscious lurking was designed to lurk in their brains, which would only make them more loyal. In the future, when someone realizes that these giants all came out of Badi's side, these giants have been slowly replaced by people controlled by Badi, and eventually an invisible control effect will be achieved, allowing Badi to control the entire United States and the entire world. The office is spacious, and the black work desk is a rigorous style designed with sunken wood. It is extremely simple, and the documents on the desk are gradually reduced to a few. Finally, he summoned several people in again, to make the most important arrangements. Andy, I'm sorry that Deathstroke cut off one of your fingers. If Deathstroke dares to deal with my people, I will not let him off easily. I received news that after Deathstroke escaped from me, he would create a force in Africa, and would definitely attack us in the future. I will strengthen you, and implant the most elite combat programs and the most elite training and combat courses in you. You will build a country for me in Africa and train the most elite soldiers. We will train troops in Africa to fight against Deathstroke, and lay the foundation for our future journey. Finally, Andy left Badi's office with fiery eyes, ready to train troops in Africa to fight against Deathstroke. Leon, you take a team, and move to the central city. Within 3 months, I want to know the people of all classes in the central city, including the underworld, nobles, businessmen, and some capable people. Make a list for me, and find a person named Bartholomew Henry Allen, who should be a child. Don't touch him when you find him. Just know him. Mike, I need you to go to Switzerland, Burn Mountain, to see if there is an organization called the Cold Flame Temple or the Cold Flame Church there, and whether there are some people who can use magic in it. Check if there are any surnames like Zattarella Circuit, to see if there is anything special. If not, go to New York and find the surname Constantine and the location of the great magician Gwani John Zattara for me. After giving all these instructions, Badi finally called Little Luther to make arrangements. Little Luther, arrange an Arctic expedition team for me. I want to go to the Arctic with the team. Things were going on tensely. Badi would not give up other arrangements, just because of the appearance of Jor-El. Jor-El has his plans, and Badi has his plans too. He believes that he will not lose. On Earth, what he knows and understands is his home turf. Among them, the most anticipated by Badi is undoubtedly magic. With magic, he will undoubtedly have a great chance of dealing with Kryptonians. In the end, Mike did not find the Cold Flame Church. It is not known whether it is because the magic is mysteriously hidden, or it has not yet been established. But for the surname Constantine and the location of the great magician Gwani John Zattara, Mike easily found it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Kent. Smallville, Kansas. A brand new 4-seater minivan, warm yellow, a slightly warm color. The minivan shines with warmth in the sun, and the open air compartment behind the yellow minivan is loaded with a lot of baby supplies. Bottles, training cups, small bowls, small keys, thermometers and hygrometers, bathtubs, thermometers, fever patches, mosquito repellent patches, nasal aspirators, shampoo and shower gel, diaper cream, talcum powder, safety sockets, safety door cards, safety table leg protectors, baby carriages, diapers, soft wipes, various types of milk powder, walkers, cloth diapers, diaper pads, and so on. These are not all. Raising a baby is a tedious thing for a family, but it is indeed necessary. This is the reproductive gene inherited by human nature. It has been like this since ancient times, and it has been bred from generation to generation, so that we have it. The yellow minivan swayed and started on the bumpy farm road, swaying the warmth of several people in the car seat. The driver was a typical American. He was not big, but you could tell from his appearance that he had a strong body from years of labor. He had some dark white skin, and his eyes had the warmth of a farmer, a good man who was not easy to lose his temper. However, he was in his 40s, in the prime of his life, but due to genetic reasons, He had no children, which was a pity for him and his wife. Fortunately, God treated them well. One day on the farm, an alien spaceship landed on their farmland. It almost confused the farm man. In it, a baby was babbling and shaking his hands, and it looked like he wanted to be hugged. His wife couldn't help but pick up the child. It was a little heavier than an ordinary child. Fortunately, she often did farm work and had a lot of strength. She smiled while holding the alien baby, exuding the radiance of a loving mother. This was the kind of love that his husband had never seen before, just like his mother, who was also so kind when she held the baby in his arms. He felt as if a gap in his life had been filled. At the moment, he decided to take the baby in. From that moment on, the baby was his son. He also became a father who would stick to and protect his child and wife. That night, he hurriedly pulled the spaceship close to the basement, took a lot of effort to pull it to the basement and hide it, and covered the pit of the spaceship with soil, and then destroyed a nearby area of impact marks, cut off the corn stalks that were ready to mature around, and covered the ground. This project took several days to completely cover the nearby cornfields with messy corn stalks and all traces. So far, he still didn't let go of his worries. It was not easy for him and his wife to have a child, and he didn't want anyone or the government to take him away. He wanted to protect his child and his wife, a family. This is a father, a dad. But in everything, there is a kind of despair that cannot be reversed by human power. Such as cancer that is desperate, lives that cannot be saved, and the desperate helplessness of sad songs and weeping. He didn't know that he was facing aliens who were beyond human beings, powerful, cruel, and even that he might be the one who was sacrificed invisibly. However, he has not experienced it yet, and it has not come yet. Jonathan Kent frowned. He looked through the windshield of the minivan and saw that the road ahead was full of bumps and potholes, and he became impatient. In the past, he did not notice how much inconvenience the old truck was shaking, but now that he has a child, he feels that this road is shaking and making people impatient. What if his own child falls on the road in the future, or if it rains and he accidentally falls into the puddles? It will be troublesome. He decided. Fill this road. In the vehicle, there was Clark's adoptive mother Martha in the back seat, and the white dog who would never leave Clark. The dog's name was Crypto, which means crypto in English. So, you can call it Little Krypton, Crypto, or Crypto. Martha frowned, and her body jumped up and down on the seat from time to time, shaking. This road is too uneven. Why did I never feel it before? Why is this road so steep? They had walked this road thousands of times, but this time, for some reason, it was the steepest, and made them feel upset. I'll fill it up tomorrow, said the farm owner, Jonathan Kent, domineeringly. He left no room for doubt, and said he would fill it up, and start filling it up tomorrow. Martha nodded in agreement, very satisfied with her husband's dominance, and looked at the swaddling clothes again. She carefully held Clark in balance to prevent him from being woken up by the steepness, but she found that the child had woken up a long time ago and was laughing and laughing, as if he had woken up suddenly. She was also worried that little Clark would cry if he woke up suddenly, but now she saw that the child was holding up his beautiful and bright blue eyes and was extremely happy. Martha's annoyance disappeared in an instant, and she looked at Clark with a smile on her face, touched Clark's head, kissed Clark gently, and then shook little Clark, humming the song of Kansas, "The ranch is my home." Clark's clear eyes babbled along with Martha's voice with concentration and joy. Jonathan Kent, who was driving, heard the voices of his wife and Clark, and his upset mood suddenly changed. A smile appeared on his lips. During the shaking journey, the whole car was filled with the style of my ranch home, warm and cozy. It was not a long way to the door of the wooden house. Jonathan Kent quickly pulled out the seatbelt, opened the door, and opened the door for his wife in the back seat. Martha held Clark, looked up at the hot sun stinging her skin, narrowed her eyes, and said, "I'll carry Clark into the house and come out to help you move things." Jonathan Kent put his arm around her shoulders and pushed her into the house, smiling and saying, "No, I can do it alone. You take care of Clark, and Krypton will help me, right?" Martha smiled and nodded, shielded Clark from the hot sun with her hands, and carried Clark into the house. Crypto's dog face was startled. You really treat me like a dog. Even if you're a dog, you can't carry things. Kryptus. Jonathan Kent called out, hung the diaper packaging back on both sides of his dog's body, rubbed his dog's head, and said with a smile, put it in the hall. Pay attention, this is Clark's diaper, take care of his butt. Krypto's face twitched a little, but when he heard Clark's name, he still moved his limbs, and ran into the door quickly with his paws. Chapter 117 Jor-El's Fear. At night in Smallville, the night sky is so huge that it is unimaginable. It is as shocking as the top of your head. It is empty and clean. The stars are shining in the sky and the moon is bright. In the wooden house, soft lights are on, and there are sounds of laughter. Under the eaves, Krypto is sitting on the wooden board with his front legs. The bright moonlight is slightly reflected on his snow white hair. He is a dog like a wolf. There is a cool breeze blowing, and there are rustling sounds in the farm in the dark night. It is quiet and comfortable under the night sky. From time to time, it opens its mouth and sticks out its tongue to dissipate heat. The dog's body has no sweat glands, so it needs to stick out its tongue frequently to dissipate heat. But it always remembers that it is not an ordinary dog, nor a dog, and always subconsciously shows the instinctive reaction of a dog. It closes its mouth again, and the dog's face looks up at the moon deeply. Suddenly, it feels like barking at the moon again. But it is a dog, not a wolf. This instinctive reaction of the body was suppressed by him again. It was Jor-El, although not completely. Its eyes opened up long-sightedness and penetrating vision, and it passed through the fields with corn stalks, and passed through the town not far away, where the night gradually came to an end. The lights were dim, and it was like shuttling through the time tunnel again. The scenery in its eyes was abandoned, and its eyes were focused, exploring the location of 16 kilometers outside the town. There was nothing there. It was originally there where it placed the kryptonite. Now it was empty. When it saw Mike take the kryptonite away, it used penetrating vision and long-sightedness to watch Mike take the kryptonite. It was the kryptonite that he had placed and prepared, and watched him leave Kansas and go to who knows where. It had no way to follow, and it needed to stay with its son. It was really afraid that once it left its son, Badi would appear, take away its son, extract the code of life, and harm his life. After all, Badi came to Earth too early, a few years earlier than himself, which was enough for Badi to develop into a magnificent trend. On this primitive planet, he should be able to become a ruler and a god like a fish in water. Its dog head turned, its size penetrated its vision, and its farsightedness was open to the extreme. After looking around, it only saw the Kansas grassland and the plants on the farm, and there was nothing it wanted to see. It breathed a sigh of relief, and then a heavy pressure rose again, and the haze enveloped its heart. Not appearing, but it doesn't mean it's a good thing. It is familiar with Badi, and it is afraid of Badi. Thinking of Badi, its breath slowed down, breathing slowly, with lingering worries, concerns, and fears in its pupils. According to the gene sequence of Krypton, Badi is just the lowest level of ordinary warrior genes, with Talon's completely low-level warrior genes, and it is a defective gene sequence. According to the genes, Badi's achievements in this life can only be the top of the first class. But in Badi, there seems to be a miracle, a situation that has never appeared on Krypton. On Krypton, he is the first miracle to break through the limitations of genes and defeat talent with hard work. This is impossible for Krypton, where genetics determines future achievements. He is a living miracle on contemporary Krypton, breaking through the limitations of genes. From an ordinary soldier, a lowest level and defective gene, relying on his own abilities, he has been promoted from a soldier to a private, a non-commissioned officer, a lieutenant, a second lieutenant, a lieutenant, a lieutenant, a lieutenant colonel, a colonel, and finally launched a military coup, and sat in the position of general. This journey has been dazzling, an unprecedented miracle. He carries the hope and light of the entire underground class of Kryptonian society. The entire lower class of Krypton is simply crazy and worships him to the extreme. Genes cannot make him successful. What makes him successful is his own efforts, unyielding will, and the efforts that never think that genes are talents, and the madness of breaking genes. It was as if he had experienced the madness of despair. The efforts he made were self-mutilation, self-abuse, and self-torture. After falling into pain and despair, he climbed up from the abyss, raised his fist, and broke the genetic destiny. This caused a revolutionary impact on the Kryptonian society at that time. The lifeless lower classes of the entire Kryptonian society followed his footsteps and burst into unprecedented enthusiasm. It was as if Badi was a belief, a desire, and a light that led them forward. Genes cannot determine the future. Talent cannot prove everything. This man destroyed the long-standing genetic science of Krypton with his crazy will. This is unscientific. This is completely unscientific. At that time, Jor-El, like other scientists who tested Badi's genes, screamed in shock. This is really unbelievable. But the successive tests showed no problems at all. It was still the low-level, defective gene. Some of them even believed that this defective gene was not actually a defect, but a high-level gene that they had not discovered, a comprehensive gene with great talent. However, various experiments were done. Except for the miracle on Badi, nothing else has changed. This completely frightened Jor-El. This man was completely twisted and influenced by his own will. Especially when Badi's military coup took place, Jor-El faced him and felt that Badi was more terrifying than him, who had surpassed the genetic limit. In an instant, Krypton was plunged into war. Countless lower classes regarded him as a belief and charged into traps for him to break the long-standing highly strict social class of Krypton. In many battles, they were at a disadvantage. It was hard to believe that their side had cutting-edge technology, high-level genes, and a lot of generals, staff officers, and commanders like General Zod. Facing Badi alone, they were actually controlled by him in the war, and the battle was extremely difficult, and they were completely suppressed. If he hadn't gotten some things about Badi from Hale at the end, and deduced that Badi had a great chance of seizing the Code of Life, and cooperated with General Zod in advance near the Code of Life and ambushed, it would be hard to imagine that Krypton would become a planet ruled by Badi in the future. Of course, the real Codex of Life had been taken away by Jor-El, but it was even more so that the fake one could not be discovered. As long as it was discovered, Badi could use this to launch a more grand reform activity, and Krypton would be completely finished. This made Jor-El extremely disappointed. At that time, they were somewhat lucky. The most elite generals and the most elite soldiers in the army on Krypton, more than 50 people came to besiege Badi, but he still killed more than 30 people alone. It is not an exaggeration to describe it as a dead end, and surrounded by enemies. With no other choice, Badi temporarily boarded the escape ship. Hale begged Jor-El to let him spare Badi's life. Jor-El ignored him and designed an ambush circle to let Badi hold a funeral in the starry sky and become a dazzling firework. But it is obvious that Badi did not reveal more. His achievements in science are no worse than those of ordinary genius scientists. Therefore, he delayed the explosion procedure of the bomb in the spaceship. Knowing that the spaceship did not explode in the starry sky, Jor-El was extremely shocked. He didn't expect that even in this situation, Badi would still be able to survive. Jor-El could almost imagine the bloody storm that would be set off wherever Badi was in the future. He and Badi were in irreconcilable opposition, and there was no intention to sit down and negotiate. Badi and the El family, it was either you die or I die. Therefore, Jor-El also made arrangements before coming. Chapter 118 Jor-El's deployment. Jor-El divided his consciousness memory into 3 parts, each with a different deployment. This division into 3 parts is actually equivalent to his death. The remaining consciousness memory is combined with some artificial intelligence. Although it can think independently, it can only complete what he wants to do under his original arrangement. Part of his consciousness memory was input into Krypto's body. It is not an exaggeration to say that Jor-El has become a dog. He has modified Krypto's genes and recreated it, making it a dog, more proficient in fighting than any warrior on Krypton. The most powerful combat skills, whether it is air combat, land combat, or naval combat, all the responses and reaction information are all recorded in this dog's body. But even so, facing Badi, a combat madman who transcends genetic limitations, the god of combat, and the unrivaled first person in hand-to-hand combat on Krypton, he does not have much confidence. In fact, Badi's last battle, before leaving Krypton, was facing the most elite, the most advanced combat genes, the most talented combat warriors on Krypton, 50 generals, and adjutant level advanced gene warriors, just like cutting melons and vegetables. Until now, the scene where Badi cut a bloody path with his hands and killed more than 30 generals and adjutant level genes, that scene, as a scientific researcher, gave him goosebumps and chills. But when he came to Earth, fortunately, Badi's genes were too low level. Facing the high level genes in his dog body, the difference in power was too great. On Krypton, Badi's genes had long been collected and studied by their scientists, so he was very familiar with Badi's genes. During the battle, he calculated countless possibilities from the genetic level. He calculated the power contained in Badi's genes after awakening, the power that would increase with sun exposure, the daily saturation limit, and the current power. In a head-on confrontation, Krypto's dog body genes could completely kill Badi with strength and speed. This kind of huge difference in power became even more terrifying after sun exposure. Jor-El transferred part of his consciousness into Krypto's body just to hide himself, so that Badi would think he had sent a dog to protect his son. He released Kryptonite and guided Badi to find the code of life. As long as Badi had Kryptonite and a way to defeat the enemy, he would come to kill Krypto, extract the code of life from his son's body, and complete his own genes. As long as he killed Badi, it would be fine. In order to avoid accidents, he took more precautions. No precautions were too much for Badi. He did not think that Badi could be killed with just the advanced genes of this dog's body. Badi would not appear to face this dog's body without absolute certainty, and when he faced it, he must have enough power to fight against the dog's body. There was a red collar on Krypto's dog's neck, like a thin red rope. This red rope was made by him on Krypton to resist the damage of kryptonite radiation. The red rope was tied around his dog's neck. At the front of the neck, there was a dog tag with Krypto's name engraved on it. The golden crystal, or looked crystal clear and beautiful. This was also a piece of kryptonite, a golden kryptonite. Golden kryptonite can permanently eliminate the superpowers that Kryptonians gain after sunbathing, including heat vision, freezing breath, farsightedness, penetrating vision, microscopic vision, super strength, super hearing, etc., turning a Kryptonian into an ordinary person. This is permanent. As long as the main body of the Kryptonian gene is still there is no way to avoid the elimination brought by golden kryptonite. This is the preparation that Jor-El made when facing Badi. Why haven't you appeared yet? Jor-El raised his dog head and looked at the bright moon with a heavy heart, like a wolf howling at the moon. The wind blew, and in the cornfield, the corn leaves on the stalks flew, and the rustling sound continued like waves. The wind was rolling up the dust on the ground again, rolling up a small tornado, and then disappeared. The mist-like dust rose with the wind, and disappeared in the dark night. The situation he was most worried about may have already appeared. Badi, from the beginning, he saw through the trap and the kryptonite. In fact, it was the trigger he deliberately threw. The code of life is on Earth, in his son. He was calm, not as eager to get the codex of life as he was on Krypton. This also shows from the side that he regarded the codex of life as something in his bag, and he was not in a hurry, or he was preparing, and would only appear when he had a fatal blow. Jor-El did not want to reach this time. The earlier Badi appeared, the greater his chance of winning. If it could only be until that time, when his dog body died, and his failure could not stop Badi, he could only transfer his son. Jor-El divided his consciousness memory into 3 parts. One part was in Krypto, the dog, and he planned to fight Badi head on, or use kryptonite to trick him. Even if Badi could prevent the radiation of green kryptonite, he would not be able to prevent the radiation of gold kryptonite. The other 2 parts of consciousness memory, one part, was in his son. Clark had the nanospace technology designed by him in his body, which could open a miniature super-dimensional wormhole, search for isotopes in parallel space, and shuttle through. But this technology has never been tested before, and it is too dangerous. Whether or not something happens depends entirely on luck. To be on the safe side, he used nanospace technology to set it up on his son, to give his son a chance to survive. If it is not necessary, he would not want to open a macro super dimensional wormhole, because it is too dangerous. But compared to the fate of his son, if Badi catches him, Jor-El would rather give it a try and finally depend on fate and luck. As for the remaining part of consciousness and memory, he uploaded it to the L family, which represents the key of hope. There are all kinds of technologies of the Science Council that Badi wants, which can definitely tempt Badi to use it. Once Badi uses the key of hope, Jor-El will become an artificial intelligence, lurking in Badi's computer, becoming a super hacker, an artificial intelligence specifically targeting him. In the future, maybe he can gradually destroy this Krypton sinner. Jor-El's plan is very comprehensive and crazy. No one would have thought that he would split his consciousness and memory into 3 parts. No one would have thought of such a thing. Even if it was crypto, this dog was exposed, the key of hope would destroy Badi. As for his son, it depends on how fate arranges it. He made 3 preparations and deployments. It's time to deliver the key of hope to Badi. He needs to know what Badi is doing now and how he will target him. Jor-El's dog face was calm and serious. He was thinking in the moonlight, thinking of a safe and unobtrusive way to send the key of hope. The moonlight in the dark night set off his snow white and soft hair. He sat here alone, a thinker among dogs. Against the backdrop of the bright moon, he looked like a picture with a pensive beauty. But not long after, he was thinking too long and his mouth opened unconsciously. A tongue stuck out of his mouth. Ha, ha, ha. When he realized that he had this dog reaction again, he quickly blew twice, closed his dog mouth again, and looked serious, trying not to stick out his tongue. Chapter 119. The Great Magician Zatara. Manhattan, New York. Manhattan is the most densely populated of the 5 boroughs in New York City, USA. It is mainly composed of an island and is surrounded by the East River, the Hudson River and the Harlem River. Many famous companies are concentrated here. It is known as the world's economic center and is the richest district in New York. The well-known Times Square, Broadway Theater, United Nations Headquarters, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, Rockefeller Center, and other famous buildings are all located here. A large white cylindrical building located at the corner of 8th Avenue and 33rd Street. This is Madison Square Garden. It is called a garden, but it is not a paradise for plants and flowers. It is a palace of sports and entertainment activities. It is the venue for many ball games and large indoor activities such as rock concerts, personal concerts, political rallies, etc. In the future, it will not only be a place where NBA superstars such as Jordan and Reggie Miller left magical memories, but also where teenage idol Taylor Swift, pop king Michael Jackson, Queen Madonna, pop princess Britney, European and American pop queen Lady Gaga, dolphin sound queen Mariah Carey, pop king Justin Timberlake, new generation pop music prince Justin Bieberation group Mayday, and SM Town, a family artist of SM Entertainment Co. Limited in South Korea, have held concerts there. And nowadays, there is a magic show by the great magician Gwani John Zatara here, attracting many people who are interested and fanatically love magic, and many people from other cities come here to see the magic style of this great magician, Gwani John Zatara. This name may be a little unfamiliar, but when it comes to the future Dark Justice League, the woman who wears fishnet stockings and swallowtail performance clothes creates the Dark Justice League with Constantine, and has a love scene that Constantine can't forget. I believe everyone will know who it is. Zatanna. Gwani John Zatara is Zatanna's father. Zatara is a direct descendant of Leonardo da Vinci. He is related to many famous prophet masters, alchemists, and mystics in history, including a certain king of Atlantis. This is a magic family with incredible magic power. It is also the easiest person for Badi to find about magic, because Gwani John Zatara is a famous magician in the world today, and he is popular throughout the United States in this era. He needs to understand how much damage magic can cause to Kryptonians. Are Kryptonians really zero magic resistance? Can it become his power to deal with Jor-El? For Jor-El, he will not think that getting kryptonite can easily solve him. Badi believes that Jor-El can send his son to Earth. And he has obviously made all preparations to face himself. And he also needs to be fully prepared to destroy the L family in one fell swoop. Magic is the best point to use. Madison Square Garden was bustling with people, and people kept coming in with excitement. The great magician Zatara didn't perform many times, but each time was fresh, surprising, shocking, refreshing, and exciting. He had a great reputation in the United States and even in the world. Even the World Magic Association had invited him to join as a magic consultant, but he refused without hesitation, which made the entire World Magic Association regretful. Madison Square Garden was very crowded, and the crowds of people moved gradually. Badi was also in it. The surroundings were boiling, and the temperature emitted by everyone heated up the whole scene. Even in winter, it was still as warm as early spring. Queue up and check tickets. Mike and Badi followed the crowd and walked straight into the venue. It was a bit like a postmodern concert venue, with a structure like a gladiatorial arena. After sitting down, the people around were still talking about the great magician Zatara. There were many people praising, worshipping, and extreme for their peers. There were also people who thought that he was aloof, arrogant, and disdained the World Magic Association alliance. There were also fans with sparkling eyes, looking forward to the upcoming performance. The personality of Gwani John Zatara, the information that Badi found in Mike, and some psychological character predictions of the team, and Badi also made some simple assessments. This person is a little self-centered, and proud of his talent. He has the arrogance of surpassing others in his profession. This profession represents magic, not magic. A magician appeared in the secular world and used magic to perform magic. Badi didn't know if it would violate the low-key rules of the magic world, but he knew that Zatara was arrogant, liked to show off, and enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention, so he appeared here. In short, Zatara was unwilling to be lonely, unwilling to be low-key, and enjoyed the hot eyes of others. A slightly vain magician who likes to show off and enjoys being the center of attention. Badi pondered in the noisy performance venue, thinking about the methods he could use to get Zatara to help him deal with Jor-El. There are some more despicable methods such as kidnapping his daughter, but he doesn't know whether it is difficult or not, and he doesn't know whether his daughter is born. The mystery of magic is difficult for him to understand. Of course, he must first understand whether Zatara's magic can have an effect on Kryptonians. If it is ineffective, or the effect is not as great as a legend, then everything will be over. The sound in the venue gradually became smaller, as if there was a tacit understanding, and the silence spread bit by bit, quietly waiting for the appearance of the protagonist. Suddenly, there was a faint feeling that Badi even thought was an illusion, and the wave spread throughout the venue. This is a spiritual feeling of gathering the spirit. The wave that makes people gather the spirit. I don't know what it is. Badi frowned. This faint feeling made him feel very uncomfortable. The lights suddenly went out and darkness came. The crowd held their breath in anticipation in the darkness. There was no noise. This was the way the great magician Zatara appeared. It was only 2 seconds after the lights went out that fireworks were sprayed around the stage. A man in a tuxedo, holding a short stick and magic wand, with black hair, a confident face and a smile on his lips, appeared in the center of the stage. Compared with European and American physiques, he was a little thin, but his confidence and demeanor were remarkable and calm, with a rather elegant temperament. Badi's pupils shrank, and in an instant, his penetrating vision was turned on, and he looked at the stage in the darkness, as if it were daytime. He was slightly awed in his heart. The penetrating vision did not see through Zatara. He was still himself, standing in the center of the stage, waiting for the audience's cheers. Zatara seemed to feel Badi's sight, and turned his head slightly, looking into Badi's eyes, with a smile. Chapter 120 Unscientific Magic. Oh. Seeing the great magician Zatara appear, the entire stage venue was instantly in an uproar, and the atmosphere became heated and turbulent. The uproar of more than 10,000 people became heated, and the rumbling and hot sound waves were transmitted around Badi, which had a feeling of encouraging the heart to beat, constantly spreading, merging into the crowd, and wanting to cheer with them. It seemed that there was a kind of spiritual transmission that spread to the hearts of the people. Badi was in it, and he felt it particularly deeply. His body was sensitive to the warm temperature radiated by the people next to him. The waves of heat were transmitted to his skin, making him feel the heat and their excitement. Even Mike's eyes were still full of expectation, interest, and some heat. Badi's calm eyes swept over the people around him. It seemed that the place was burning. Everyone was excited, and their eyes were radiating heat. Only he was a piece of ice, standing in it. Herd mentality, the environment tends to be harmonious, plus a little magic, that he didn't know what it was. Badi didn't know what it was, and even suspected that it was an illusion, but in the end he felt that Zatara did something, or guided the spiritual direction of these people. It might be a kind of magic, a guided magic. After all, Badi didn't understand magic at all, but with his strong perception, he could sense the abnormal reaction of the crowd. "Welcome, my friend, the first magic show. What do you hope for?" Zatara bowed gracefully, and the short stick magic wand flew flexibly in his hand, free and easy. When he said welcome at the beginning, he looked at Badi's position with a smile, and met Badi's eyes. Obviously, he already knew that Badi's abnormal eyes were on him. He smiled and faced it without panic. Badi's face was calm and composed, forming a strong contrast with the fiery atmosphere around him. He met Zatara's eyes, nodded slightly, and apologized with a faint smile. Since he found out, he didn't hide it. His eyes were more focused on Zatara, but the penetrating sight had been retracted, and the penetrating sight couldn't see through his figure. Walking in the air, the universe and the sea of stars. Entering the videotape. Body separation. Teleportation. Some audience members cheered loudly, shouting out their favorite magic projects. As more and more people agreed, the sound became even louder. This was not like a magic show at all, but more like a concert. In that case, let's do it all again. Zatara's words made the whole place cheer again. They could see their favorite magic show in full. The cheers did not last long, and soon they became quiet. The venue of more than 10,000 people was left holding their breath and staring at Zatara. Zatara enjoyed the attention of the crowd, smiled and turned around. The hem of the tailcoat was raised, and the short stick magic wand in his hand turned more quickly and flexibly. "Then come, teleportation," Zatara said, and threw the short stick magic wand in his hand upwards, and the short stick turned in the air like an electric fan. No one paid attention to how the short stick flew so fast. All eyes were on Zatara. Even Badi held his breath and waited, opening his penetrating vision and microscopic vision again, wanting to see clearly what Zatara was doing with his magic. In Badi's eyes, all the people in the venue had become transparent outlines, and only Zatara's thin body with elegant temperament could be presented within his sight. The power of magic protected him from Badi's prying. Suddenly, Zatara's body disappeared in the center of the stage, and the air fluctuated slightly, forming an invisible corridor. It can be imagined that the power of magic has taken effect. The fluctuation of the air is just a slight incidental ripple. Badi can't see where the trace of magic is at all. This invisible corridor spreads in front of Badi. It's like a fighter jet breaking through the speed of sound and punching an invisible hole in the sky. Zatara's figure appeared in front of Badi in an instant, suspended high in the air. It's not a wormhole. It's not the opening of a wormhole. The unreasonableness of the physical properties makes people puzzled, and Badi frowned. Magic is really unscientific. Zatara smiled. He stood in the air, as if he were walking on flat ground. He squatted down, smiled with teeth showing, and stretched out his palm with a bit of enthusiasm. "High five," he said to Badi with a smile, and was actually a little excited. At this moment, he didn't look like a great magician, but a like-minded fellow who transcended human beings. He smiled happily to see new things. The whole venue was instantly looking for him because of his disappearance, and was excited because he appeared in front of Badi in an instant. This was too fast. It was like teleportation, which made people exclaim. Badi's eyes shrank, and he was dignified. When he saw Zatara from a distance, he didn't feel much of a threat. But now that Zatara was in front of him, he instantly felt a dangerous reaction in his body. Goosebumps appeared, and the cells were restless and violently resisted. It was like the tip of a knife on his neck, and the cold light was about to cut his throat at any time. His body naturally resisted Zatara and the magic power in Zatara's body. Badi looked at Zatara with a stern look. His pupils were filled with confidence and curiosity. He looked at Badi with an excited smile. Badi calmed his face, retracted his microscopic vision, penetrated his vision, stretched out his palm, and pushed it towards Zatara's hand. Power in the envy of more than 10,000 people, he and the great magician Zatara clapped their hands. When the two palms collided, Badi clearly felt that the power in his palm was suppressed. The cells were suppressed like a flood, and they were suppressed a lot, but they were not without the ability to resist. This feeling was much better than kryptonite. Facing magic, he might have room to resist, but there was no legendary phenomenon of zero magic resistance that was powerless to resist magic. Then, Zatara teleported back to the center of the stage, caught the short stick magic wand that fell down, and then spun and threw it into the sky. He teleported in multiple directions continuously, in front of the audience, sometimes clapping hands with the audience, and sometimes walking in the air with the little girl, causing exclamations. Then there were a series of cosmic seas, which made people feel as if they were in the universe. Entering the videotape, it was as if they were communicating with the people in the predetermined videotape. The horror caused by the separation of the body, and a series of magical and extreme magic performances, which made people breathtaking. When leaving the venue at the end, Badi once again felt a fluctuation that was a little more intense than the opening, and sensitively felt the fluctuation of his own mind consciousness, as if reminding himself that this was a magic. This was a subconscious guidance, leading others to believe that this was magic. Badi felt a great sense of threat in his heart. He had no way to stop the invasion of this kind of mind fluctuation, and he could only know it when his mind was fluctuating. This kind of magic, like mind magic, made him alert. He and Mike followed the crowd out of the door. "What a wonderful magic show," Mike said with admiration in his eyes. Badi's heart sank even more. That kind of subconscious mind magic had begun to affect Mike, making him think it was really a magic show. But before coming, Badi had reminded Mike that what they needed to find was magic. Even so, Mike could not resist being deeply affected. Magic, unexpectedly, was so mysterious and magical. This is really unscientific. Chapter 121 Destiny, the Future of Life and Death. After the magic show, the crowd gradually left Madison Square Garden. Backstage, Zatara sat on a chair without any manners, with his heels on the dressing table. The chair was almost tilted back by him, leaning up and down. He did not look like an elegant magician at this moment, but a big man, whistling, holding a manicure knife in his hand, to sharpen the corners of his nails, waiting for his assistant with expectation. The other side of him was an absurd, uninhibited, casual, even dissolute and flamboyant personality. Otherwise, he would not be able to use magic to become a great magician who attracted everyone's attention among ordinary people and enjoy the admiration of ordinary people. Knock knock knock. An English aristocratic butler, thin and upright, with grey hair on his temples and slightly wrinkled face, knocked on the door of the backstage very politely, and then opened the door directly without courtesy. Hearing the knock on the door, Zatara's eyes suddenly became interested. The chair that was tilted up and down stopped at a 75-degree angle. He stopped trimming his nails, and turned to look at the door. Zatara's eyes were interested, but the moment he saw the visitor, they dimmed again. He curled his lips in boredom, and was quite disappointed with the visitor. The butler came to Zatara with a tall figure, bowed to him, and said, "Master, many old people in the family are very dissatisfied with you." Zatara sneered. "Dissatisfied? Wait until they use magic to defeat me, then they will be qualified to be dissatisfied." He came from a strict magic family, and he really hated that family with many rules and rules. After he learned the family's magic with the best talent, and became the most powerful magician in the family's history, and defeated the group of old guys in the family, he chose to become a great magician in the eyes of ordinary people. This choice is really great. There are admiring eyes, people cheering for you, beautiful women, money, and a life of feasting and revelry, instead of the lifeless home where people only know how to study magic all day. The housekeeper knew that his young master had such an arrogant personality, so it was no surprise. He leaned forward and said, "The British Magic Association Union sent a condemnation, thinking that you are out of bounds." Zatara stood up with a shrug, and the crisp sound of his black leather shoes on the ground. He raised his head slightly, looked down at the world, and his eyes were cold. He sneered, "The rules of the British magic world are useless to me. They have no right to interfere in my life." He has some British blood. Britain has been a place where magic flourished since ancient times. The Zatara family is also a member of the British Magic Association Union. It has a long history, and has also established many enemies. Such an extraordinary use of magic and such a vulgar performance for ordinary people gave them a reason to attack. I will naturally compete with the old guys of the British Magic Association one by one to see what qualifications they have to restrict my life. Zatara sneered. Bradbury, you go back and write me another letter of challenge to the British Magic Association. Butler Bradbury's face remained solemn and serious, and he said indifferently, young master, there is already a new generation of successors to the Magic Association, who don't like you, and are ready to teach you a lesson. Zatara raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly from his nose, with impatience and coldness in his eyes. Just them? The people of this generation are vulnerable. It's a waste of my time to fight with them. Even though he knew the strength of young Master Zatara, Butler Bradbury still felt that the young master was too arrogant. The weirdness, mystery, vastness and unfathomable nature of magic. No one knew what kind of strange magic would suddenly emerge and easily defeat people. Facing a magician, it is really difficult to say who is strong and who is weak. Just like summoning magic, summoning a demon or an angel, such a powerful creature can completely reverse the situation and perish together. There are also mind magic, fear magic, magic of controlling the five senses, puppet magic, irony magic, soul manipulation, probability control, time and space magic, curse magic, voodoo magic, and so on. There are too many magics, weird and powerful, which cannot be despised by any magician. Zatara's attitude is a taboo for a magician. He is too arrogant, proud of his talent, and lacks awe for magic. Butler Bradbury sighed in his heart that, if the young master does not change his character, he will suffer a great loss sooner or later, and his life will be in danger. Butler Bradbury remained calm, still maintaining a solemn and serious look, and said, the master used blood guidance to detect the fate of the young master. The young master may be in danger recently. The master sent me to stay with you. Zatara's proud look could not help but stagnate. Blood guidance is a magic that uses magic blood to cast. It is a magic that will reduce lifespan and magic power. It can easily dry up the blood of the caster and make the caster look like a corpse. Even though he knew that his father might be able to control the degree of casting due to his strong strength, there would not be much problem, but he still couldn't help but worry in his heart. That old guy, is he okay? He asked hesitantly and concernedly. He and his father did not have a good relationship. He even beat him up. He didn't use magic, but used fists and feet. How could the old guy be able to fight him as a young man? He was beaten so hard that two panda eyes appeared, and then he ran away from home with a high-spirited look. The master only lost 20 years of his life, and it's not a big deal. He hopes you can go home. Butler Bradbury said. Zatara's expression was no longer frivolous, no longer arrogant, and no longer sneered. His face was calm. He knew that he might really be in danger, so his father used blood guidance to sense his fate. However, at the level of 20 years, he could only sense the danger of life and death. The specifics were invisible, and other things could not be sensed. That's why his father wanted him to go home and use the entire family to guard against his life and death crisis. He pondered and said, even my life is in danger, and other people in the family are even more unreliable. There is no need to implicate the people in the family. After Zatara finished speaking, he suddenly smiled freely. He wanted to see what kind of danger could put him in a life and death situation. His magic is not vegetarian. Butler Bradbury was relieved. The young master did not have any opinions about the family, but he was impatient with a group of old antiques who taught him a lot of rules, but they were not enough for him to beat, and they were still whining. No wonder the young master beat up the elders in the family before leaving. The master is already looking for Madame Shangdu, wanting to know the future accurately so as to deal with it. Master, you'd better go home. Butler Bradbury was worried. If even the master's life was in danger, then the family would indeed be unable to resist. But even if it was difficult to resist, the elders in the family would take action and stand in front of the master to block any danger for him, even if it meant death. But magic is really weird. Even with thousands of troops, it is not as good as controlling a little blood or hair to cast a curse, which is enough to kill a person. Magic cannot be measured by the number of people. Snap! At this time, a young man rushed to open the door, and the door slammed against the wall. He rushed in and shouted hurriedly, Master, I can't find him. Chapter 122 Four Eyes. The young man was wearing a beret. He was very young, only about 17 or 18 years old, with a few yellow spots on his face. He held the beret with one hand and opened the door with the other hand. He couldn't wait to tell his young master, "Young master, I can't find him." However, the first person the young man saw was not his young master, but the butler who had trained him since he was a child. He immediately stared with his eyes wide open, and his body subconsciously stood up straight. The words were swallowed in his throat, and he whimpered with his neck straightened and his eyes wide open. He was a little afraid of Butler Bradbury, because it was the butler who taught him to be a servant of the Zatara family and to serve the Zatara young master. He suddenly felt something was wrong. If the butler saw his impetuous appearance, he would definitely be scolded again in the future. This was miserable. The young man almost wailed in his heart. As expected, Butler Bradbury frowned slightly. His face remained serious and unchanged, and his eyes looking at him calmly were already cold and disappointed, but since his young master was present, he would not be questioned. Privately, the butler would naturally teach the young man how to become a qualified servant again. Can't find it? Then forget it. Zatara shrugged his thin shoulders and said rather boringly, originally, he wanted to get to know this superhuman, but it was a pity, he had never seen such a human before. The life magnetic field was so strong that it was stronger than the more than 10,000 people in the entire venue. If the life magnetic field was compared to light, then Badi was already a unique one, completely covering up the light of more than 10,000 people added together. How powerful would that power be? It was simply a small sun, shining brightly. The moment Zatara saw Badi, it was like being in another world and suddenly seeing an earthling, with a bit of curiosity, kindness, and excitement. Because he had never seen such a superhuman, except in the magic world, he wanted to know what kind of superhuman was Badi. He had superpowers, genetic superpowers, another field completely different from magic. Moreover, Badi had great power, but poor resistance to magic energy. He was simply the best choice for making puppets, brainwashing and controlling with mind magic, and being used as a servant. As long as he strengthened the control, strengthened the magic resistance, erased the memory, and built it again, it would be enough to harvest a powerful physical thug to detect some mysterious places, or detect dimensions, or even enter hell and let the devil descend on this body. These were all good choices. There were even some witchcraft that could transform souls, change bones and wash marrow, and obtain such a powerful body, and live for several lifetimes. However, all of the above were extremely evil, inhumane, and dark magic, not done by orthodox magicians. This kind of thing was especially loved by those half-baked, uninherited, and wild magicians. They could really do whatever they wanted for power. Zatara just thought about it in his mind. With his education, rules, and character, he would not do such things that destroy humanity. He may be arrogant and look down on the world and regard all magicians in the world as scum, but he is quite decent and kind in his heart. He knows, understands and can use some inhumane witchcraft, but he will not use it casually. But he left a very bad impression on Badi. In Badi's heart, Zatara is already a person who uses magic wantonly and gives more than 10,000 people a hint of shape. This is a big boy, not mature, and uses magic wantonly. Although he may not have any bad thoughts about Badi, but human nature, Badi does not want to challenge the bottom line. Before, he selected the people in the magic world who wanted to contact, and there was a bit of helplessness in the choice, because there was no way to contact people in the magic world, and Zatara happened to appear in his sight. From the comics, this is a decent magician, and Badi came to contact him himself to see how to use him to help him fight with Jor-El. But now, Badi felt that things were not that easy. It was not that he could just make friends with him and then deceive him with a lighter fight for himself. It was all because of magic. Badi felt threatened. It was even possible that he would face this kind of magician before he could deal with Jor-El. This feeling of being suppressed made him feel a little threatened, so he gave up his original plan. He had originally planned to meet Zatara after the magic show, but now he didn't think so. He wanted to know more about Zatara's character and background before making a decision. Decide which method to use to get him to help him. Threats, Kidnapping, and some low-level, despicable strategies are also fine. Deception, inducement, taking advantage of his character, making friends openly, and asking for help are also fine. In any case, he needs to understand him in more detail and secretly, before he can use him, when he appears in front of him again. Previously, the information collected was too rudimentary. Therefore, after discovering that Zatara's assistant wanted to invite him, without knowing his intention, and knowing that he was threatened by magic, he quickly left Madison Square Garden with Mike. Badi was unwilling to stand under a dangerous wall. When leaving, Badi even chased the assistant boy. The assistant boy also knew magic, and his feet were like the wind, chasing his back faster than ordinary people. This should be because his magic was not good enough, and Badi was far behind. After being thrown away, Badi was still circling around Manhattan casually, not sure how much they wanted to see him, not sure if they had any way to lock him, and not sure what Zatara's excited and curious eyes meant when he saw him. But Badi now felt that it was not the time to meet them. He was not 100% sure that Zatara could help him. In addition, Badi had been using super hearing and heard Zatara, the butler, and the boy talking. Obviously, even if they were magicians, they did not use magic anytime and anywhere to prevent their words from being revealed, and they did not expect that Badi could hear their conversation in a corner of Manhattan. It was already dark. Manhattan was lit up at night. The city's bustling lights, the charming night scenery emanated from the city. This corner in Manhattan was a bit desolate. The street lights were dim and yellow. Every city has a corner, even a bustling big city. There are such small corners, a little dirty alley, robbery, murder, crime. In the past, all happened in such alleys. A cool breeze blew gently, slightly blowing his windbreaker. The hem of the windbreaker swayed. The yellow light above his head made him look a bit lonely. He closed his eyes and stood here, waiting for Mike to drive over. He kept thinking in his heart, never noticed, never cared. There were two people wearing suits, which were originally very decent. After they got drunk, the suits and ties were untied and tilted to one side. The ordinary suits on their bodies were stained with alcohol liquid, and they staggered and supported each other into the alley not far from him. Shadows sank into their figures. They were reeking of alcohol, shuttling in the alley. From time to time, there were drunken hiccups. Excited words came out. There's a hiccup, a woman here. A high school student? She's so small. Hiccup, and her breasts are flat too. I like her. Let's move her to the hotel. No, right here. Then, he heard the rustling sound of a belt being untied. Badi heard the sound, and he was just a few steps away. If he wanted to be a hero and save the beauty, this would undoubtedly be the right time. He was unmoved. He didn't even blink. He was not a hero, and he didn't have any extra sympathy. He would only pity and save others when he wanted to, and when he didn't want to. Even if he was just a few steps away, he didn't want to take action. Suddenly, a shrill, terrified voice rang out. Ah, she has 4 eyes. It's a demon. An evil ghost. The two sobered up in an instant, with faces full of fear, crawling and rolling out of the alley, with terrified faces, and running past Badi with weak and trembling hands and feet, stumbling and bumping, panting and pale. Obviously, they were scared, and ran away in panic. At the moment, when they screamed in fear, Badi felt that an ancient troll had awakened in the alley, and the aura it exuded was like standing between heaven and earth. A powerful torrent of magic gushed out, pouring down like a river dam collapsing. His body reacted violently and frantically, and his cells were running wildly, like a person unwilling to drown in the water. The boiling blood aroused a sense of threat he had never experienced before. Badi clearly felt that the adrenaline in his body had surged, and everything around him was visible. The tiny particles in the air collided with his skin. All the feelings at this moment were extremely clear. His heart seemed to be suffocated by the pressure, as if the sky had collapsed. The magical energy seemed to pour down from the sky, drowning and washing people away. This magical reaction was more powerful than Zatara's, and it was a greater threat to Badi's body, making him feel fatal. To compare, Zatara's was a bucket of water, and the water in this alley was a lake, enough to drown people. Badi's pupils shrank as he stared at the alley. In this alley, there was a magical reaction that could kill him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Raven. The magic reaction in the alley appeared very suddenly. Soon, in an instant, it seemed as if a huge figure stood in Manhattan, grinning at New York with a gloomy and evil look. The bustling night scene of Manhattan seemed to be stagnant in the momentum of this ancient troll, which was terrifying. That huge magic reaction was constantly rushing towards Badi like a flame, stimulating his adrenaline level to surge. His eyes were tightly shrunken, his muscles were tense, his face was stern, and he stared at the alley without blinking. He was horrified by the sudden explosion of magic reaction in the alley, but more importantly, his body was ready to fight it. However, he didn't expect it. The hot burning of the waves hit his magic reaction and gradually shrank. Badi seemed to see the image rewinding. The momentum of the magic reaction seemed to shrink like a shockwave, and it was like a nuclear bomb shrinking back little by little to the moment before it exploded. In an instant, after suddenly appearing, it was only a few seconds, and this magic reaction shrank and disappeared, suppressed and put away. The yellowish street lights flickered, and finally, with a wailing sound, they went out completely, and the entire street began to lose light. One by one, the street lights went out in waves, and the lights in the buildings disappeared, and the entire street became dark. Complaints and curses were heard in the buildings, and the surrounding area was filled with turbid darkness and curses. Badi's body relaxed, and his adrenaline surged. Physical fitness calmed down. It was as if a heavy stone had fallen from his heart. The disappearance of the magic reaction calmed his body's adrenaline. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the cold light flashed. He still controlled his body to be in the best and easiest state to fight. His blood was in a boiling state, but there was no adrenaline that was aroused by a fatal death. He stepped forward into the alley with narrowed eyes and turned the corner. He could see the darkness as clearly as day. There was a somewhat dirty alley, black sewage, and flies buzzing around the garbage dump. At that moment, the sensitive flies were frightened and flew up. A girl sat against the wall. Her body was thin and her back was against the wall. Her hood covered her head, revealing her pale and delicate chin. In the darkness, a red afterglow shone from her hood. Raven. Seeing this scene, Badi felt a little dignified. He originally thought that she was the kind of high school girl who didn't know how to cherish herself, went out to clubs, took drugs, and had promiscuous sex. These rebellious high school students are very popular in Europe and the United States. For such high school girls, Badi obviously wouldn't want to waste a bit of his strength to save them. But he never expected to meet a general of the future Teen Titans. According to the time calculation, in this era, when superheroes have not appeared, and the Justice League has not appeared, there will be no Teen Titans known as the young version of the Justice League. The appearance of Raven can be said to have disrupted Badi's understanding of time in the comics. But since this is the real world, there must be many differences from the comics. He was only slightly confused, and chose to accept any unexpected situation. In the alley, the sound of Badi approaching was heard. In the darkness, he stepped closer to Raven. As he got closer, Badi could see her more clearly. Her figure became smaller. She sat on the ground in her cloak. The hood of her cloak was lowered, and there was a red afterglow shining. She seemed to be abandoned by the world, sitting alone here, with no place to go. Badi suppressed the restlessness from his body. The reaction to the fatal feeling was like suppressing pain. He stretched out his hand towards the burning flame. He stretched out his hand and gently lifted her lowered head. Badi held her chin and raised her head. 4 eyes with red afterglow shone in the darkness. There were no pupils, and the eyes were red as blood. At first glance, it felt like he was dazzled and seeing double. The red afterglow reflected on Badi's face. His sculpture-like firm face reflected an attitude of serious observation. 4 eyes, quite beautiful. Badi showed an admiring look on his face. What he admired was this kind of power, the power of a demon, born with the right to use magic, and born to restrain Kryptonians. Raven is powerful, there is no doubt, inheriting the bloodline of the great demon Sangong, possessing powerful magic, and has been blackened many times in the comics. Once blackened, it is the power to destroy the world. Even her father, Sangang, covets her and wants to get his daughter, let his daughter become his general, and conquer the multiverse. Sangang is one of the most powerful, evil, and tyrannical demons in the multiverse. Badi didn't know what kind of existence Sangang would be after he entered this real world. But now, if Sangang appears in front of Badi, he can kill Badi with one finger, which is enough to show the power of Sangang, the demon. And if you want to use Raven, you must face the wrath of Sangang, the great demon of the multiverse. This is undoubtedly very dangerous. The level difference is too big. Hearing Badi's admiration, Raven's red pupils trembled slightly, the red light of the four eyes gradually faded, the eyelids closed, and the two eyes on the forehead gradually disappeared. She opened her eyes, her pupils were black, and she recovered from her dazed look. Her pupils gradually focused, and in the darkness, she saw Badi. The two looked at each other in the darkness, as if they wanted to see through each other. Raven said, "Your soul and will are different." His voice was a little decadent, low, and gloomy, and his tone was intermittent. It was not pleasant to hear, as if he had not spoken for a long time, and was not used to speaking. At this time, the light of a car headlight flashed through the alley, and the light flashed, illuminating the faces of the two people. Badi suddenly made a move. He put his hand through the back of Raven's knees, and the other hand through her back. He picked her up in a princess hug, and walked out of the alley. Raven did not resist. She raised her head, and looked at Badi's profile. "Please help me." Chapter 124 Help. In the alley. Suddenly, the air was squeezed, and with a pop sound, Zatora appeared in the darkness wearing a swallowtail performance costume, with a skinny body and a stern expression. Just now, he felt the breath of a demon with extremely powerful abilities. That kind of momentum was overwhelming, standing on the top of the entire world, stronger and more terrifying than any demon on Earth. He even thought that the moment the breath appeared, it was enough to destroy the entire New York and bury tens of millions of people. But the breath only appeared for a few seconds and then disappeared. This made him feel even more terrified. The demon hid. His face was very stern in the darkness, and an unprecedented cold light appeared in his eyes. "Is this my death?" Zatora narrowed his eyes. In the darkness, his eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of flowing colors, and began to trace back the phantom information of this area. Fifth Avenue in New York. The stream of light of vehicles shuttled through the shadows, driving on this avenue. In a black SUV, in a spacious space, on the leather seats, in the back row, Badi and Raven sat side by side. Mike glanced at the girl and his boss through the rearview mirror from time to time. He felt that it was a bit far-fetched. Since he got the superpowers given by the boss, the world seemed to have revealed more sides. Now there is a girl who says that she is the daughter of a demon, and her father has ill intentions towards her, intending to lock the world through her and destroy the world. I would never do this in my dreams. Of course, this problem is not the biggest one. The biggest problem is that his own boss still believes it, which makes Mike stunned. In the car, it is quiet and silent. The scenery outside the window, vehicles, and pedestrians flashed by. In the back seat, Raven was pale and silent. She had said a lot just now. Badi's eyes were thoughtful, and he said in a deep voice, "I believe you." Just now, Raven told her past experience. It was slightly different from the comics Badi had seen before. Her mother was deceived by a cult, and summoned a demon from an unknown place in the universe. Then the two had a relationship, and gave birth to Raven. After giving birth to Raven, her mother discovered that Sangang was a demon. She didn't want her daughter to become a demon, so she took her daughter to the peace-loving Agarus sanctuary, trying to purify the evil power in her body. However, Sangang chased after her and destroyed the entire Agarus sanctuary. In order to prevent Sangang from getting Raven, her masters and mother teamed up to teleport her to Earth, where she also died tragically at the hands of Sangang. Raven has actually been on Earth for 2 weeks, and has been looking for the mysterious power of the Earth, trying to get their help to fight against Sangang, destroy Sangang, and seal Sangang. Otherwise, Sangang will soon be able to chase after her through her blood, and even this Earth will be destroyed. Until she met Badi and saw that his soul and will were different from others, she felt that she could fight against Sangang and had hope of sealing Sangang. Raven was pale, thin, and weak. She had been sealing her evil power and didn't even dare to use her emotions. Once her emotions fluctuated violently, the seal would be leaked. Once the evil power of this demon was leaked, it would be enough for Sangang to chase her and track her to the earth, which would only destroy another planet. But I don't have that much power to fight such a powerful demon. Badi stared at Raven's pale face, a girl who was about 16 or 17 years old, pale-faced, and didn't dare to show her grief. He understood his own power. From Raven's words, he also understood that Sangang's power was enough to destroy the earth. He had no way to fight against it, so how could he help Raven fight Sangang? He is just a projection, not the real body. She had a blank expression on her face, very pale, and even her eyes didn't dare to show too strong emotions. Her petite body was wrapped in a cloak, surrounding herself. Raven said, as long as this projection is cut off and sealed, he will not be able to come to this world through me. Just now, my breath has been leaked. I can only continue to hide for a week at most. The projection of the 3 palaces in the Agarus sanctuary will receive it. At that time, the earth will become the next place for his invasion. Mike looked sideways through the rearview mirror. This girl wrapped in a cloak is undoubtedly a bit mysterious, but what she said is always unbelievable. There is still a week for the devil to destroy the earth. This is really speechless. But his boss looks serious, which makes him worried. Is there really a devil? Just a projection is enough to destroy a planet. Badi was silent. According to what he knew about the 3 palaces, it seems that there is really such power. The Teen Titans defeating the 3 palaces in the comics is completely unbelievable and unfeasible. What do you think the success rate of sealing the 3 palaces is? Badi frowned. This is too difficult. He needs Raven to help him deal with Jor-El, and even prevent Jor-El from escaping with the Codex of Life. But before that, he needed to help Raven deal with Sangang and seal Sangang's projection. Obviously, this was not a battle of the same magnitude. Sangang's projection could directly destroy a planet, and was difficult to fight. 50%. Your soul and will are very special. They can transcend the constraints of physical genetic talent. It's very strange, and I don't know much about it. But as long as you can survive Sangang's destruction in the spiritual world, I can use a red crystal to seal Sangang outside. Raven said. Even she didn't believe that there was a 50% chance. It was just because Badi's soul was a little special that she thought it might be able to last long enough. If she failed this time, she would die with her mother and master. Her face was gloomy for a moment, and then her pale face was expressionless. She didn't even dare to be gloomy. Badi had always avoided fighting with such a powerful opponent, and had been planning and laying out many means on Earth. He would rather be the mastermind behind the scenes, and gradually become strong enough to walk in the dimensional universe, and destroy the universe. And now, there is always a moment for him to choose. This moment is too dangerous. If he fights against Sangang and holds on to his soul destroyed by Sangang, he may even be devoured. Once he survives, Raven will help him deal with Jor-El and obtain the Code of Life so that he can have a smooth journey and have the foundation to conquer the multiverse. As long as he integrates the Code of Life, or if he stays in the sun for 15,000 years and becomes another golden Superman, he will have a powerful and transcendental power. This power is worth risking his life at this moment. Maybe you can help me solve some things first, and then we can deal with your father. Badi pondered, his eyes flickering slightly. He hoped that Raven would help him first, so that his genetic defects could be completed, and after he sees the Code of Life, he could deal with Sangang. In that way, Badi would have enough potential to increase his strength to be even stronger than it is now, and he would also have enough strength to protect himself. It would be too dangerous for him to get caught up in the battle between Raven and Sangang now. There is no time. I need a few days to reverse the passage of the Argalus Sanctuary and catch the 3 palaces off guard. Raven said. She naturally didn't know what Badi was thinking, but she knew that there was indeed no time. The time was so tight that it was unbelievable. There was only a week, which was not enough to extract the Code of Life. Even if Jor-El was defeated, there was no time to extract the Code of Life. Badi was silent. He turned his head to look out the window and knew that there was no way to delay. Pedestrians and vehicles kept flashing in front of his eyes outside the window. This was an opportunity. At the same time, if he was not careful for a moment, there would be too much mortality rate, but he had to fight. He had arranged so much on Earth and made so many preparations. Now he still needed to fight with his life, to fight for everything in the future. He looked out the window and rolled down the window. The wind rushed in and blew his hair. He was a little angry in his heart. There were too many monsters, too many gods, and too many powers beyond everything in this world. Even now, he was still so weak that even Jor-El couldn't kill him. His own weakness was too obvious, and he was too weak. This anger at his own weakness tortured almost every cell in his body, causing him to feel a sting of anger. He was already extremely eager to increase his strength. He was so eager to be able to crush any god, any demon, anyone. Badi had a blank expression on his face, and his eyes flashed with cold light. I will not die. In the future, I want your father to become a dog. Raven was stunned and shook for a moment. It seemed that she didn't know where the confidence of the man in front of her came from. This was just a projection of Sangan, which was enough to destroy the planet. It was really absurd to want Sangan to become a dog. It was like playing with the multiverse like marbles. Only to that extent could Sangan become a dog. She could only understand that this was just the words of a man with a strong self-esteem who was unwilling to be compared to others. She never thought that one day in the future she would look so strange when she saw her father sticking out his tongue and breathing at her feet. Chapter 125 Things to Regret in the Future. Still on 5th Avenue, the Black Suv was driving in the endless stream of vehicles, not very fast. One after another, cars of different colors passed by it. Some were left behind, some were ahead. The lights on both sides of the road were bright. Pedestrians were laughing and scolding. High-rise buildings were endless, and the signs and neon lights in front of the shops were colorful, reflecting the splendor of the most famous city in the world. Inside the car, no one knew that it was so easy to decide to save the world. This was really funny for Badi. He never wanted to save the world, but now for his own sake, he had to act as a hero, to save the world with an uncertain life and death, and seal the projection of a demon monarch. Just because he had an extremely firm will, and a unique soul. Maybe he could, but who could say for sure? This made him feel angry at his own weakness, and at the same time he was more eager for power in his heart, and he wanted to be stronger all the time, to protect himself from any threat. Danger was always with him, and it had never changed since Krypton. Whenever he felt powerless and helpless, his heart turned into a hideous madness. The anger at his own weakness made him do everything beyond himself and beyond his physical genetic talent. Just like the changes on Krypton, no one knew how much Badi had borne and injured for himself, and how crazy his mind was, driving him to do all this. He never complained about anyone or anything, never complained about God or anything else, for arranging this kind of life for himself. What he did have was that he was tortured and crazy, using everything, constantly, desperately, climbing towards the throne of supreme power, and would rather die than stop. He wanted to control the stars, dominate the universe, and let everything be under his feet. He would never allow anyone to dominate his life. And now, the projection of the 3 palaces in a week can dominate his life, which made him particularly violent and crazy. Once again, someone threatened his life. This feeling made him mentally twisted, and he wanted to tear the 3 palaces apart crazily. When you know that there is a person who can easily crush you to death and you have to face him, everyone will go crazy, or crazy fear, or crazy unwillingness, or crazy resistance, or crazy desire to tear him apart and kill him. The cold wind blew into the car window, and Badi turned his head to look out the window. The colorful neon lights of recruitment gradually flashed in front of him. He sat like a stone, motionless, looking out the window. The tough face, that seemed to be sculpted from marble, under the constant flashing of neon lights, gave birth to a magnificent, firm, and fearless appearance. Raven tilted her face slightly, and looked at Badi's profile. There was a bit of curiosity in her eyes. She had a unique sensitivity to emotions, and could even absorb the emotional power of others to use. She felt that this man was torturing and whipping himself in his heart. He tortured himself, whipped himself, and moved forward unswervingly in the direction he wanted to go. Raven could even feel that, if Badi stopped for a step, he would be very happy and live in a sea of happiness. Even if Badi smiled, it would be enough to make people feel a kind of charm that could turn everyone upside down. As long as he stopped, he would be the sunshine and hope, giving others light and leading others forward. He would be a pioneer and a beacon of progress in life, illuminating everything. But he seemed not going to stop, with a rock-like will, walking on his way. Behind him, in his heart, there was great pain and pain. Raven felt a little dignified in her heart, and suddenly she had this feeling that Badi had an absolutely painful past, which was unknown to outsiders, and it caused his current personality. Raven's thin lips were a strange dark purple. She opened her lips slightly, ready to communicate with Badi about strategies, plans, and Badi's power, and what he could do. If possible, she even wanted to understand Badi's inner pain, because she felt that the two might have something in common, and she also had her own pain. Her mother, her masters, and everyone in the Agaris sanctuary died because of her, because her father Sangan died. This desperate pain and grief carried her surviving life, but she couldn't even be desperate and sad, because too intense emotions would cause the seal to collapse. This made her even more painful and desperate. Looking at Badi, as if they shared the same pain and despair, made her heart a little calmer. When her thin dark purple lips were about to open, suddenly, a gurgling sound came from her lower abdomen. In the carriage with wind blowing in, it was particularly harsh among the external wind. Raven closed her thin dark purple lips and pressed her hands on her abdomen unconsciously. This was the sound of hunger. In an instant, she was no longer in the mood to appreciate Badi's profile. On the contrary, she straightened her body, pursed her thin dark purple lips tightly, and looked very solemn, as if the gurgling sound just now was not made by her body. This gurgling sound brought Badi back to his senses. Mike, who was driving the SUV, felt strange. Would a demon be hungry? What did it eat? Was it a human? Mike was thinking, while driving the vehicle. Badi closed the car window and looked at Raven. Raven's pale face, sitting on a thin body that was more dignified than before, with a straight back, looked like a dignified young lady who had received aristocratic education. I sealed most of the energy reactions, so that the energy reactions stopped supplying cells. The body needs food intake to maintain nutrition, Raven said solemnly, with a straight back. Although her stomach made a gurgling sound, she did not show any embarrassment or blushing on her face. She just kept a solemn expression and said the body's reaction seriously. In short, she was hungry and needed food. Then after she finished speaking, her stomach gurgled again for the second time. Raven's expression became more serious. He pressed his stomach tightly with both hands, pressing his stomach under the cloak deeply. His thin dark purple lips were tightly pursed, and his expression was very solemn. He even gnashed his teeth. For a young girl, this kind of thing was really terrible and embarrassing. She even had an impulse to immediately unlock the seal and provide energy to the body so that it would stop crying. Badi smiled lightly. He didn't expect that Raven, a half-demon, would also be hungry. His crazy desire to tear the three palaces apart suddenly slowed down and calmed down. Mike, go get some food, Badi said. Mike was stunned for a moment and asked hesitantly, eat, in the car? Badi replied lightly yeah. Mike fell silent. He nodded, took out a pair of sunglasses from the storage box under the driving instrument panel, put them on himself, and then found a parking space on the side of the road, parked the SUV, and went out of the driver's seat to find food for Raven. Raven didn't show any embarrassment on her face, but her fingers under her cloak were deeply sunken into her belly. After Mike left, only Badi and Raven were left in the car, and the atmosphere was a bit awkward. Raven made 2 consecutive gulps, which made Raven want to die. Her face became more and more serious, and she straightened her eyes, not daring to look at Badi. This was too embarrassing. Then, Badi did something that he would regret for decades to come, and it was also this thing that connected him and Raven, and they have always been connected. He took out a square chocolate wrapped in gold foil from the storage box and gently placed it on Raven's thigh, even accidentally touching Raven's thigh, which was a bit cold, like a leather case. Badi didn't feel anything, but Raven's thigh trembled. Eat some chocolate first, Badi said, without any special expression of watching a good show, just kindly caring. Because he felt that Raven was not only half a demon, but also a human girl, with human girl's emotions, but she suppressed them. Raven nodded, quickly opened the gold foil wrapper, bit her dark purple lips, and quickly bit the chocolate with her white teeth, chewing and melting in her mouth. The sweet chocolate melted, and the warmth flowed down her throat. At this moment, she felt that the deliciousness of chocolate was imprinted in her heart. She had never tasted such a taste, which could be bitter with a sweet aroma, and smoothly enter her throat, body, and stomach. Thank you, it's very sweet. Raven's serious expression eased a little, and she didn't press her belly tightly, and she enjoyed the taste of chocolate a little. The silence in the car returned. Raven even felt a little panicked. She had never experienced this kind of inexplicable emotion, but she suppressed it, and continued to sit upright in the seat. It was not until Mike came back that Raven breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she was directly at a loss. Mike opened the back door and directly carried a blonde woman with heavy makeup and revealing clothes, who was obviously a streetwalker, into Raven's seat, and put her on Raven's legs. Then he closed the door directly, turned his back to the door, took out a custom-made top-grade Cuban cigar from his suit, pinched off the end, took out a lighter, lit it up, and took a deep breath. I didn't expect that the boss has a habit of watching demons eat. Mike sighed, and under the light of the street lamp, he puffed out smoke, and looked up at the twinkling stars in the night sky. He seemed a little sighing, and he understood the boss's special hobby a little more. It turns out that in addition to liking to expose his body to the sun, and liking the color white, the boss also has a habit of watching demons eat. In the car, Raven's eyes were confused. She glanced at the blonde woman lying on her thighs, and could smell the cheap perfume emanating from her body, which was very unpleasant. Raven was particularly confused. What's going on? She looked at Badi with a confused look, obviously confused by this sudden incident. Badi's eyes were also confused. He asked Mike to get some food, but why did he bring someone back? Mike, what is this? Badi directly called Mike back, who was facing the car door with his back to the car door, sighing and puffing smoke, looking up at the night sky. Food. Don't demons suck blood, eat internal organs, or eat souls? Mike said as a matter of course. He was also confused by the boss's question. This is a normal meal for demons. There is nothing wrong with it. He walked 2 streets before finding a lone streetwalker, knocked her out, and brought her to the boss's new friend to eat. Raven's face darkened. I don't eat people. Mike was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that he had made a mistake. He quickly apologized, carried the streetwalker out of the car door, and quickly ran to buy normal food. Badi deeply felt that Mike's superpowers had caused problems with his IQ. Why does Mike seem so stupid? When Mike came back with pizza, hamburgers, and packed steaks, quick food, he felt that he might have offended the boss, and was going to be punished by the boss. Because when he came back, he saw that the parking space was empty. Where did the car go? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.